The morning sun glared through the windshield, reflecting off my white gown as we drove towards the wedding venue. Daniel and I had been planning this day for months, and the excitement bubbled inside me. I, Leah, a 32-year-old nurse, was about to marry the man I thought was my soulmate. "Leah, isn't it beautiful today? Perfect for our wedding," Daniel said, his voice calm and reassuring. I smiled, nodding in agreement, feeling the weight of my engagement ring against my finger. Suddenly, Daniel's eyes fixed on something outside the car. His expression changed from serene to intense in a matter of seconds. "That's Rachel," he muttered under his breath. Rachel, his ex-girlfriend, was walking along the sidewalk, struggling with a heavy bag. "What?" I asked, confused. "Why does that matter?" Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he slammed on the brakes, jolting me forward. "Leah, get out," he said abruptly. I was taken aback. "What? Why? I need to help her. She's struggling. Just get out now." His tone was sharp, brooking no argument. "But, Daniel, it's our wedding day. Can't we just call someone to help her?" "No time. Just get out." Daniel's voice rose, his eyes not leaving Rachel. I felt a mix of anger, confusion, and disbelief. Slowly, I unbuckled my seatbelt and stepped out of the car. The door slammed shut behind me, and Daniel drove off, leaving me standing there in my wedding dress, out, alone and bewildered. Tears welled up in my eyes. This was not how I imagined my wedding day. The sight of Daniel's car disappearing around the corner, chasing after his past, shattered something inside me. I felt a cold, sinking feeling in my stomach. Had I misjudged the man I was about to marry? Standing on the sidewalk, I realized I had no phone, no wallet, nothing. I was completely stranded. The wedding venue was a 15-minute drive away. I had no choice but to start walking. As I trudged along the road, my mind raced. How had things come to this? Daniel, the charming, attentive man I had fallen in love with, had just abandoned me on our wedding day for his ex-girlfriend. The man who had once listened to my every worry, who had comforted me after long shifts at the hospital, now seemed like a stranger. Every step felt heavier than the last. My mind kept replaying the moment Daniel told me to get out of the car. It didn't make sense. Why would he do this? Was there something between him and Rachel that I didn't know about? By the time I reached the venue, my feet ached and my heart felt even worse. I was a bride without a groom, walking into what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, now clouded with doubt and betrayal. I entered the venue, trying to compose myself. The staff rushed towards me, concern etched on their faces. "Miss Leah, are you okay? Where's Mr. Daniel?" Taking a deep breath, I replied, "I don't know. He left me on the way here." My voice cracked as I spoke. Just then I saw Daniel walking towards me, his face a mixture of guilt and confusion. "Leah, I'm so sorry. I just thought—" "Thought what, Daniel?" I interrupted, my voice cold. "That leaving your bride on the sidewalk on our wedding day was a good idea?" Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The realization of what he had done was finally dawning on him. The Daniel one knew, the one who was always so sure of himself, now looked lost and defeated. But it was too late. The damage was done. I turned away from him, my heart heavy with a decision I never thought I'd have to make. In the sanctuary of my small dressing room, the weight of the veil felt like a shroud of disillusionment. The reflection in the mirror showed a bride, yet the sparkle in her eyes had dimmed. The betrayal of the morning's events gnawed at me, unraveling memories of how Daniel and I had come to this fractured moment. Our story began 2 years ago, under much simpler circumstances. I was introduced to Daniel at a small gathering by mutual friends. He was charming, his laughter infectious, and his interest in my nursing career genuine, or so I had thought. As our relationship progressed, so did the subtleties of Daniel's control. Compliments about my dedication to nursing soon turned into thinly veiled comments about the time it took away from him. "I just miss you, that's all," he'd say, but the implication was clear. His needs should come first. I remembered the evening he first showed his disdain for my job. We were having dinner, and I was excitedly sharing a breakthrough with a patient. Instead of sharing my enthusiasm, he coldly remarked, "Isn't that a bit too much effort for someone who's not even family? You should focus more on what's at home." Those words stung, but I brushed them off, attributing them to stress from his own work. I convinced myself that Daniel's increasingly possessive behavior was just his way of showing love. But as I sat in my wedding dress, abandoned on our wedding day, those excuses crumbled. The turning point came 6 months before our wedding. During a heated argument about our future, Daniel had blurted out, "Maybe you should just quit your job after we're married. Wouldn't you prefer to be a good wife and take care of our home?" I was aghast. "Quit my job? But I love nursing. It's not just a job for me, it's a calling." Daniel scoffed. "A calling? Come on, Leah. It's not like you're saving the world. A wife's place is at home, supporting her husband." That night, I lay awake, wrestling with doubts and Daniel's antiquated views. However, my love for him, blinded by the hope that love could conquer all, led me to dismiss these red flags. The morning of our wedding, those ignored warnings came back to haunt me. As I stood alone in the dressing room, the reality of who Daniel truly was became painfully clear. The man who had vowed to love and protect me had left me on the side of the road for another woman. A knock on the door pulled me from my thoughts. It was my best friend, Sarah. Her eyes were full of concern. "Leah, are you okay? What happened?" I recounted the morning's events, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah listened, her expression turning from shock to anger. "That's unforgivable, Leah. You deserve so much better than him," Sarah said, her voice firm. "But I love him," I whispered, more to myself than to her. "Love doesn't leave you stranded on the road on your wedding day," Sarah retorted. "You need to think about what's best for you, not him." Her words echoed in my mind as I looked at my reflection again. The bride in the mirror was strong, independent, and deserved respect. Respect that Daniel had failed to give. In that moment, a resolve began to form within me. Daniel's actions today were a clear sign. I couldn't marry a man who saw me as less than an equal, as nothing more than an accessory to his life. Emerging from the dressing room, I found Daniel pacing anxiously in the hallway. He looked up, his face a mask of regret. "Leah, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me. Please, can we just forget this happened and move on?" Forgetting was not an option. I squared my shoulders, I'm meeting his gaze with newfound determination. "No, Daniel, we can't just move on. What you did today, it opened my eyes. I can't marry someone who doesn't respect me or my passions." Daniel's face fell, a mix of shock and disbelief washing over him. "But Leah, I love you." "This was just a mistake." "A mistake that showed your true colors," I said, my voice steady. "I deserve someone who supports me, not someone who leaves me on the side of the road for an ex." Turning away from him, I left Daniel standing there, his pleas fading behind me. The decision was painful, but necessary. I would not be a bride today, but I would walk out of this venue with my head held high, ready to face a future where I was valued and respected. The days following the broken wedding were a whirlwind of emotions and hard decisions. It was during a small, tense gathering at my home, with both our families present, that the true extent of Daniel's character began to unravel further. As we sat around the living room, the air was thick with unspoken words and disappointment. My mother, always my pillar of strength, broke the silence. "Leah, we support whatever decision you make, but are you sure you want to end things this way?" Before I could respond, Daniel, who had been quietly brooding, spoke up. "Leah's just overreacting. We can sort this out. It was just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I echoed, my voice laced with incredulity. "You left me on the side of the road on our wedding day, Daniel." Daniel's mother, a stern woman who had always been cordial to me, turned to her son with a frown. "Daniel, that was inexcusable. You need to make amends." Daniel rolled his eyes, a dismissive gesture that sent a wave of anger through me. "I already said I was sorry. What more do you want?" I felt my hands clench into fists. His lack of remorse and understanding was infuriating. "Sorry doesn't just erase what you did, Daniel. It's not just about today, it's about everything leading up to it." My father, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. "Leah, we just want you to be happy and respected. If Daniel can't give you that, then maybe it's best to part ways." Daniel scoffed, his arrogance on full display. "Oh, please. This is all just being blown out of proportion. Leah knows I'm the best she'll ever have. She's not going to leave me." His words struck a nerve, and I felt a surge of defiance rise within me. "The best I'll ever have?" "Daniel, you've done nothing but belittle my career and my choices. You don't respect me as your partner." Daniel's father, a quiet man, finally interjected. Son, you need to realize the gravity of your actions. You can't treat Leah, or any woman, like this. But Daniel was unrepentant. I don't see why everyone's making such a big deal out of this. Leah, you're just too sensitive. You should be grateful that I'm willing to overlook this and still marry you. The room fell silent, the audacity of his words hanging in the air like a toxic cloud. My mother's gaze hardened. Leah is not the one who should be grateful, Daniel. She's a strong, independent woman who deserves someone who truly values her. It was then that I realized the full extent of Daniel's narcissism and disrespect. He saw me not as a partner, but as a possession, something to control and belittle. Daniel, this isn't just about today, it's about how you've treated me all along, I said firmly. I don't need someone who sees me as less than they are. I need a partner who respects and supports me. Daniel's face contorted with anger. Fine. If that's what you want, then we're done. But don't come crawling back to me when you realize your mistake. I looked at him, the man I had once loved, and felt nothing but disappointment and resolve. There's no mistake here, Daniel. The only mistake was thinking you could change. As he stormed out of the room, his family in tow, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It was over. The wedding, the relationship, all of it. I had made my choice, and though the road ahead was uncertain, I knew it was the right one. In the aftermath of our failed wedding and the tumultuous confrontation with our families, I expected Daniel to retreat, to maybe even show a hint of remorse. Instead, he doubled down, his true nature unraveling in the most public and humiliating way. The day that should have been our wedding turned into a spectacle that I could never have anticipated. I had decided to go through with the reception, not as a celebration of marriage, but as a gathering of friends and family to thank them for their support. But Daniel had other plans. As I mingled with the guests, trying to maintain a semblance of composure, Daniel burst into the venue. His arrival was like a storm, chaotic and unsettling. His eyes, once warm, now bore into me with a strange mix of anger and desperation. "Leah, we need to talk, now," he demanded, grabbing my arm with a force that made me wince. I pulled away, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "There's nothing left to talk about, Daniel." But he was relentless. "You can't just end things like this. We're meant to be together." His words drew the attention of the guests, their murmurs growing louder. I could feel their eyes on us, a mix of pity and curiosity. "Daniel, you left me on our wedding day. You humiliated me. There's no coming back from that," I said, my voice rising. He scoffed. "Oh, come on, Leah. You're overreacting. You know I only did that because I care about you. I wanted to make sure Rachel was okay." The mention of Rachel's name sparked whispers among the guests. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. "You care about me?" I countered. "Is that why you compared me to Rachel, belittled my career, and demanded I quit my job?" Daniel's face twisted into a sneer. "You're just too sensitive. You need to learn your place, Leah." My place. Those words echoed in my mind, fueling a fire I hadn't known I possessed. "My place is not with someone who doesn't respect me," I retorted. "I don't need you, Daniel. I never did." His expression shifted from arrogance to something uglier, a mix of rage and wounded pride. "Fine. But you'll regret this, Leah. You'll never find someone like me." I looked at him, seeing him for the petty, insecure man he was. "That's the point, Daniel. I don't want someone like you. I deserve better." With that, I turned my back to him, leaving him standing in the middle of the room, his anger palpable. The guests parted for me, their expressions a mix of respect and sympathy. As I walked away, I heard Daniel's voice, shrill and desperate, calling after me. But I didn't look back. I had closed that chapter of my life, ready to start anew, free from his toxic presence. That day, I not only walked away from a broken wedding, but also from a relationship that had been suffocating me. I walked away with my head held high, my dignity intact, and a heart ready to heal and find true respect and love. In the weeks following the debacle of what should have been my wedding day, I found solace in routine, immersing myself in work and the comfort of friends and family. However, Daniel was not content to fade into the background of my newfound tranquility. It began with unexpected, unnerving encounters. I would often find Daniel waiting outside my workplace, his presence a stark reminder of the control he once wielded over my life. Each time, I firmly told him to leave, but my words seemed to fuel his determination. One evening, as I left the hospital, Daniel confronted me again. His usual arrogance was replaced by a desperation that bordered on mania. "Leah, you can't do this to me. We're meant to be together," he pleaded, blocking my path. I stopped, my patience wearing thin. "Daniel, it's over. You need to accept that and move on." He shook his head, his eyes wild. "No, I won't let you ruin this. We were perfect together. You're just confused." His insistence was unsettling, and I took a step back. "I'm not confused, Daniel. I'm clearer now than I've ever been. We're done." As I tried to move past him, Daniel grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "You're not going anywhere. You're mine, Leah." That was the last straw. I pulled away forcefully, my voice loud and clear. "I am not your property, Daniel. I never was. Let go of me now, or I'll call the police." The threat seemed to penetrate his delusion, and he released me, his expression one of shock and anger. "You'll regret this, Leah. You'll see." I didn't respond. Instead, I walked away, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. I wouldn't be intimidated or swayed by his threats. True to my word, I reported Daniel's behavior to the police. They took my statement and assured me they would handle it. A sense of empowerment washed over me. I was no longer the woman who would tolerate Daniel's manipulation and disrespect. The next I heard of Daniel was through mutual acquaintances. His obsession with winning me back had cost him. His professional reputation had taken a hit, with colleagues and clients alike distancing themselves from his increasingly erratic behavior. But the real downfall came when news broke that Daniel had been fired from his job. His conduct, once excused as high-strung ambition, was now seen for what it was, a series of aggressive and unprofessional outbursts. As I heard these stories, a part of me felt vindicated. Daniel, who had always prided himself on his control and status, was now unraveling, his true nature exposed for all to see. It was a harsh lesson in humility and respect, one that he had brought upon himself. In a strange way, his downfall was the closure I needed. I had moved on, my life a testament to my resilience and strength. Daniel's descent was a stark reminder of the bullet I had dodged, a life of control and belittlement I had bravely walked away from. I no longer felt anger or sadness when I thought of Daniel. Instead, there was a sense of pity for a man who had lost himself in his own arrogance, and a profound gratitude for the freedom and respect I now embraced in my life. Months had passed since the day I decided to turn a page in my life, leaving behind the shadow of a relationship that was more a prison than a partnership. The echoes of Daniel's downfall served as a distant reminder of a path I had narrowly escaped. But life, as it always does, moved forward, and so did I. I found myself in a new town, a fresh start, where whispers of my past were just that, whispers, irrelevant and fading. My days were filled with the fulfilling challenges of my nursing career and the simple joys of newfound freedom. I had grown, not just in strength, but in my understanding of what I truly deserved. It was on a bright Saturday morning, in the quaint local market of my new town, that fate decided to bring a semblance of closure to my story. I was perusing fresh produce when a familiar figure caught my eye. Rachel, Daniel's ex-girlfriend, the unintentional catalyst of my wedding day disaster, was there, browsing not too far from me. Our eyes met, and there was a moment of mutual recognition, followed by a hesitant approach. "Leah," she said, her voice tinged with a mix of surprise and something akin to empathy. "Rachel," I replied, the name feeling strange yet familiar on my tongue. "I heard about, well, everything," she said, her gaze kind. "I'm so sorry for the part I played in it, however unintentional." I shook my head slightly, a small smile on my lips. "You have nothing to apologize for. If anything, you helped me see the truth." Rachel nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Daniel is a complex person. I've had my fair share of troubles with him." I raised an eyebrow, curious despite myself. "Troubles?" She sighed, a weary look crossing her face. "After your wedding day, he wouldn't leave me alone. Kept insisting we were meant to be together. I had to get a restraining order." The news didn't surprise me, but it did bring a sense of finality. Daniel, in his obsession, had spiraled down a path of self-destruction. "I'm sorry you had to go through that." Rachel shrugged, a small, sad smile playing on her lips. "It's over now. He finally got the message, or at least I hope he did. I'm just trying to move on." "Moving on is the best we can do," I said, feeling a kinship with this woman I once saw as a rival. We chatted for a bit longer, exchanging stories of moving forward and the lessons learned from our encounters with Daniel. As we parted ways, I felt a sense of peace. Walking away from the market, I realized that this chance meeting was more than just a coincidence. It was a reminder of how far I had come, of the strength I had found in myself to overcome adversity and disrespect. My steps were light as I made my way home. The burden of the past finally lifted. I had survived, thrived even, and in doing so had found a deeper appreciation for my own worth. Daniel's chapter in my life was closed, a distant, fading memory. Ahead of me lay a path of my own making, filled with possibilities, and the promise of a future where respect and love were not just desired, but demanded. In that moment, I knew that the best revenge was not in the downfall of the one who wronged me, but in the life I would build, free from his shadow. A life where I was the author of my own story, strong, respected, and unapologetically me.
Aunt Rachel, are you sure about this? A few days after getting married and moving into our new home, I invited my beloved niece and her mother, my sister, to visit. During their visit, my niece said something that made us uneasy. "Hey now, kids shouldn't be messing with grown-ups." My husband quickly scolded her, his worry evident. But there was another reason why he was freaking out. "My name is Rachel, and I'm a 30-year-old pharmacist. I often look after my niece who lives nearby, and she has grown very attached to me. She's the cutest, and I end up spoiling her. Every time my sister picks her up, she complains, 'I know I'm the one who asked you to look after her, but you spoil her too much.' Of course, whenever she drops her off, she warns, 'Remember, you can't spoil a child when raising them.' But I always joke and reply that parenting is a mother's responsibility. That's how things go every day in my life. My sister is a nurse, so she's busy most of the time. She works in a well-paying hospital ward and also takes night shifts. On the other hand, as a pharmacist working at a drugstore, I have fixed working hours and no night shifts. I'm off on days without outpatient visits, and I don't have to be called in when the clinic is understaffed. So I often end up looking after my niece when my sister is busy. It might be because of her situation, but compared to kids her age, she is very calm and obedient. Girls are said to grow up faster than boys, but in her case, I think her family environment plays a significant role. I've been spending time with her to make sure she doesn't feel lonely, but now she has me wrapped around her finger. She's a quiet child who doesn't seek much attention, but she has this one ability that's hard for others to understand. For instance, when I tell her, "The park was empty today, wasn't it?" Time flew by quickly. Want to take a shortcut home? She would give an eerie response, saying, "Auntie Rachel, we shouldn't go that way. There's something bad there. Let's take the long way around." Incidents like this happen often. What bad thing? I've heard that children have heightened senses that allow them to see and hear things we can't, but is that for real? To be honest, I don't fully believe it. One day, a regular male customer at the pharmacy asked me out for lunch. When you hear regular at a pharmacy, you might think he's sick, but that's not necessarily true. This man got injured while working and is just getting treatment, so he's healthy overall. In the beginning, he visited frequently, and we casually chatted. His injury was healing well, and we were talking about him maybe not needing to come anymore when he asked me out for lunch. After a few lunch dates, he invited me out for dinner, and we had drinks at a rather fancy bar. I started to let my guard down with him and even shared some personal things about myself. It started to dawn on me that crossing that line into a relationship was just a matter of time. Then he proposed to me very passionately. "I want to get married to you right now. I can't imagine my life without you, Rachel." Hearing him say that made me incredibly happy. I was overwhelmed by the realization that he needed me in his life, and I found no reason to reject him. So I accepted his proposal, feeling as if I were being drawn into it. To my surprise, he picked me up in front of everyone, laughing like a child. I found that side of him charming. "Let's have a ceremony just for the two of us right now," he suggested enthusiastically. He mentioned knowing someone in the bridal industry who could host and prioritize our wedding ceremony. While I was delighted, I still wanted to be blessed by our loved ones at our ceremony, so I turned down his suggestion. His disappointed face honestly made my heart ache, but I wanted our union to be blessed by others more than anything else, so I chose to stick with my decision. Even though he looked disappointed, he respected my feelings and withdrew his suggestion quite easily. That was another thing I liked about him. The very next day, which was the happiest day of my life, I shared the news of our engagement with my older sister before she went to work. Seeing her joy, as if it were her own, made me relieved that I didn't have to rush the ceremony. As I was happily recalling yesterday's events, he texted me saying he wanted to see me. When we first started dating, I remembered him mentioning that he had a younger sister. However, I was surprised to hear for the first time that his sister was hospitalized at the moment. When I asked why he hadn't told me earlier, he explained that he didn't want me to accept his marriage proposal out of sympathy for him. He also pointed out the possibility of the opposite happening. I assured him that I wouldn't make decisions based on his sister's illness, and his soft response of "I know" made me fall head over heels for him. But I still pulled myself together to stay grounded. He showed me a picture of his sister and told me, when I told her about you, Rachel, she said she can't wait for the day when she can call you Big Sis. I felt a deep desire to make his sister's wish come true as soon as possible. Holding my hand, he said, "Let's become a family soon." I was moved once again. Even though we weren't married yet, I wasn't against the idea of being called Big Sis by his younger sister. I wanted to visit her in the hospital before we got married, but when I mentioned this to him, he said, after I visited her the other day, her condition worsened and the doctors limited her visitation. "Is it okay for you to be seeing me right now, in a time like this?" I asked. He responded by pulling out a charm from his jacket pocket. "All I can do is pray for my sister. I stopped by the church before I came here to see you, Rachel. There's nothing I can do besides praying for her." "Damn it," he expressed, frustration evident in his voice. Seeing him like this, I deeply wanted to support him. The next day, he suddenly stopped contacting me. I guess his sister's condition had worsened. I hoped he wasn't pushing himself too much. After about 3 days, his usual cheery self showed up at the pharmacy. Although he could have just texted me, he said he wanted to see me in person, which made me happy. We made plans to meet after we both got done with work. When I arrived at our rendezvous right on time, he was already there waiting. As I suspected, he explained that he had been by his sister's bedside due to her deteriorating condition. He told me she was still not allowed to have other visitors, but her condition was now stable, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Then he handed me a letter, saying it was from his sister. I was surprised. I didn't expect to receive a letter from her since I heard she was in critical condition. Reading my expression, he explained, "Seems like she's been writing a lot, and I didn't even know." He then shyly admitted, "Actually, I fell for you at first sight, so I had a crush on you for a long time." It turns out he had been talking about me even before we started dating. The letter contained words of hope for our relationship, dreams of her brother's love being fulfilled. "I hope the day comes when I get to call you Big Sis soon," she wrote. "I wonder if I could even be a flower girl," she wrote, dreaming of me marrying her brother and us becoming a family. Fighting an illness is hard. It's probably a struggle to even use her limited energy to wish for others' happiness. Yet her letter was filled with thoughts of her brother getting married to me. Her words brought tears to my eyes. "Let's get married soon," I told him with excitement. It seemed unlikely that his sister would be able to attend our wedding, but I wanted her to witness her beloved brother's big day. After some insistence, I got him to reveal the name of the hospital she was staying at, and I found a wedding chapel nearby. The chapel was visible from the patient's room or the rooftop, making it feel like she could be there with us. I begged to have our ceremony there. He was touched to know that I genuinely cared about his sister, and he was fully on board with the idea. We soon fixed a date. Ideally, we wanted to choose one of those auspicious days, but we couldn't afford to be picky. The date we chose was less expensive and the only one available, so we went with it without hesitation. While preparations were hastily underway, he made a suggestion. He asked if we could wait a bit longer to turn in our marriage certificate. His sister's condition had worsened, and she needed surgery as soon as possible. The medical bill was going to be more expensive than expected, affecting our wedding budget. It didn't feel right to have a wedding under such circumstances either. When I suggested waiting until after his sister's surgery, he exclaimed, if she found out our wedding was canceled because of her, it would ruin her will to heal. Hearing that, I couldn't say anything, and the wedding proceeded as planned. For the time being, I paid for our ceremony in one installment, under the agreement that we would split the costs after his sister's medical bills were paid. Despite the short notice, a decent number of our close friends and family managed to attend our wedding day. My own sister, who's a nurse, even managed to get time off with the help of her colleagues, saying, "This is an important day for my little sister." "I can't miss it," my cute little niece declared. Dressed up and joining the celebration, she quickly got shy around the grown men and ended up hiding behind me. Her actions were so adorable that I couldn't help but chuckle. After the wedding, I moved into our new home. He had suggested I move in with him since his place was too big for him alone. Given that his sister's surgery was going to cost more than we anticipated, we decided not to purchase a newly built home. I could support him for a while, but we couldn't predict when he'd be able to pay back the rest of our expenses. So, I moved into this place. My sister understood my decision but still felt it would be better if we had our own new place. To ease her concerns, I invited my sister and niece over. My boyfriend, now my husband, agreed to the idea. Upon visiting, my sister immediately began inspecting our house, showing her concern. "Hey, it's a bit rude to check every corner of our house, sis. So, I see the 32-year-old CEO of an import company makes good money, huh? Are you satisfied now?" "Yes, I suppose so," she replied, and my husband and I let out a sigh of relief. The only downside was that moving here made it more difficult to frequently babysit or take care of my niece. It was too far for a 5-year-old to travel alone, and with my duties of nursing my husband's sister, I was too occupied. That's when my niece, out of the blue, said something eerie. "Rachel, I think you should leave this house." "Huh? Why?" "Because another woman is already living here." "Hey, even if you're a kid, there are things you should and shouldn't say." My husband angrily turned towards my sister, questioning her parenting. "Can you perhaps see her?" When my niece nodded yes, my husband's anger seemed to dissipate into fright. "My niece is quite sensitive. Perhaps you're not good with this kind of thing." No, that's not the issue. Kids shouldn't be messing with grown-ups." "I'm not messing with you. It's someone you know really well." A woman with her black hair always tied back, thin eyes, slightly overweight, with a mole near her eye. My husband's face turned pale. He was clearly scared, but it seemed like there was something more to it. What confirmed my skepticism was my niece's next question. "What's your real name, uncle? You use so many, have you forgotten it?" Even trembling, my husband raised his voice. "You little brat, don't spout nonsense. Hey, don't yell at her just because you're scared. Shut up." My husband shoved me away. He seemed more than just panicked with fear. Even if what my niece said was strange, it always turned out to be true. My usually gentle husband wouldn't change this drastically without reason. I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't just reacting out of fear. I whispered to my sister and asked her to check inside my husband's bag in the meantime. I decided to give up for the time being and get my husband's attention. "I'm sorry, my niece was out of line." "Ha, it's okay as long as you get it." Dang, my precious day off got ruined because of all this. He glared at my niece, but she wasn't bothered. She simply looked away with a stoic expression. "Oh yeah, you have a long business trip starting tomorrow, right?" I used soothing words to placate my husband. He gradually calmed down, and the topic of conversation shifted to what he should bring back for souvenirs. However, we didn't get to discuss the details. The reason was the name on the driver's license my sister found in his bag. It was a name I didn't recognize. Furthermore, she found multiple phones in his bag. "Rachel, your guy's probably sketchy. Aren't these burner phones?" "Burner phones? The kind used in scams and such?" "Exactly, registered under someone else's or even false names. It's illegal." "And what if it is? Thanks to that, Rachel's been eating well and enjoying fancy dates, hasn't she?" he said, as if I was his partner in crime. "Cut the crap. My sister is nothing like a piece of trash like you." My sister snapped back. My niece, still stoic, said, "There's a woman clinging to him like she'll never let him go." "Watch your mouth, kid. Even if you try to scare me, I won't fall for it again," he retorted. He seemed less fearful and more brazen now that his true identity was starting to be exposed. The fact that he wasn't trying to escape showed his confidence in not getting arrested. He seemed almost inwardly laughing, so assured he was, until the moment his world came crashing down. That moment came when several policemen burst in, shouting "police," and surrounded him. My sister had already found the driver's license and called the police before telling me. All our conversations had been overheard by them. There had already been several complaints filed by different women, and the man's description matched those provided. The police were eager to catch him in the act if possible, and the situation was ideal. My sister didn't want to let him escape and wanted to protect me. It was a miraculous arrest with our interests aligning in an instant. Since we hadn't formalized our marriage, the man had no legal claim over me. The man I had thought of as my husband was now just a criminal being taken away, and I could only watch in stunned silence. Later, during the police interrogation, he seemed to resign himself or perhaps calculated that confessing would lighten his punishment. Without causing any further trouble for the police, he spoke surprisingly honestly. He admitted he intended to commit marriage fraud against me and drain me financially, likely for the medical bills of his non-existent sister. He also confessed to killing a woman he had previously dated during an argument about his true identity, which she had threatened to report to the police. Although he was frightened when my niece spoke up, he didn't seem to fully believe her, which might explain why he confessed. The police informed me of everything. The night he was taken away, he woke up in his cell choking with long hairs entwined around his neck. He confessed his wrongdoings, fearing he'd be cursed otherwise. When I asked him if it was true about the hair, he laughed and said, "Of course not." He insisted he had finger marks around his neck, but apparently he was the only one who could see them. It seems that some people, when they've committed a crime, are overwhelmed by guilt and resort to escapism. Yet, remembering the image of the woman my niece had described sent chills down my spine. As the investigation proceeded, according to the man's statement, a woman's skeleton was discovered in the woods. It made the news, and when the woman's photo was released, it matched my niece's description perfectly. My sister and I were filled with renewed fear. The man's fraudulent activities were also reported in the news, and more victims started to speak up. It seems like his list of crimes is only going to grow. The man was sentenced to severe punishment behind bars. Inside, he had to be terrified of the woman's spirit every day. I was simply astounded at my lack of judgment in having once decided to marry such a man. The trial for the incident in which I was victimized has ended, and I am finally free from everything. However, I've had enough of marriage. I moved back near my sister's house, so I'm still looking after my niece. Today, while I was dropping her off at my sister's house, I opened up to my sister about my hesitations toward marriage and love. She said, "You're just saying that now. You never know where or when you'll meet someone. You could fall in love after you leave here today." She didn't take it seriously. Time passed and summer came. Every year, I take my niece to the local summer festival. This year, as I was walking hand in hand with her dressed in her new sundress, a man walking in front of us dropped his wallet. I picked it up and tried to call out to him, but my voice didn't reach him due to the loud surrounding noise. I picked up my niece and jogged to catch up to him, returning his lost item. He thanked me and asked to treat us to something. This sparked a connection between us. In the end, the three of us had a blast at the fair that day. "You're lucky, Rachel. You've been tied to this man before you were even born." "What? Hey, what are you saying?" I blushed deep red at her words, which seemed to make him blush as well. "You never know where love will find you." My sister's words flashed in my mind as fireworks lit up the night sky. I had a feeling that a new romance was on the horizon. It's already hard to accept that my father-in-law passed away, but what my husband Bob said next left me completely shocked. "Let's get divorced. Now that I've got the inheritance, I don't need you to be my ATM anymore." For a moment, I couldn't believe what Bob was saying. "What do you mean?" I asked. Bob grinned and smugly explained, "I have about $1 million from my dad's inheritance, so I don't need you anymore." Then Bob started complaining about me. "Do you know how embarrassed I've been? I had high hopes because my dad arranged our marriage, but I was disappointed to end up with someone as plain as you." "Well, why did you marry me then? You could have just said no," I replied. "It's obvious, isn't it? For the money. Who else would marry someone like you?" I couldn't stay silent after hearing that. "Fine, here's the divorce papers." I decided to agree to the divorce without telling Bob something important. I hope he regrets this deeply later. My name is Catherine Smith, and I'm 42 years old. I run a fashion company. I married Bob, who is 2 years younger than me, 2 years ago. Our marriage was arranged. Bob is the son of Mr. Smith, the CDO of a company I've worked with for many years. Being an only child, it seemed Mr. Smith initially intended for Bob to succeed him, but Bob showed no interest and wasn't particularly good at his job. So Bob quickly dropped out of the running for successor and just worked as a regular employee. What attracted me to Bob? His laid-back nature. Since childhood, people often told me I was too serious and lacked spontaneity. I was often praised for being studious, but some people found me too stiff. Some of my ex-boyfriends even told me, You're not fun. It's like I'm dating a boss. It was heartbreaking, but I always felt maybe I was too serious. Being labeled as inflexible was a common occurrence. I struggled with handling things casually and often got too engrossed. To me, Bob seemed like he was from a completely different world. Oh, the place is closed today, Bob said during our first date. He had recommended a restaurant, but it was closed when we got there. Now, I would have been flustered by such an unexpected situation, but not Bob. Let's just go to that diner over there, he said, effortlessly changing plans. For someone as rigid as me, his response was a revelation. I thought by being with him, I could also become adaptable. That's why I decided to marry him. Many people were against our marriage. Some even suggested I could find someone better. Even Mr. Smith, my father-in-law, wasn't very enthusiastic. Are you sure you want to take on my son? It feels like I'm burdening you with him, he asked. Back then, I felt no one really understood Bob's worth. But maybe they were right. Soon after we got married, Bob quit his job without consulting anyone. He just stopped going to work. When both I and Mr. Smith asked him why, Bob casually said, "Why do I need to work if you are making money for both of us?" My father-in-law and I were so taken aback that we didn't know what to say. Why would he rely solely on me for income? Oh, the place is closed today, Bob said during our first date. He had recommended a restaurant, but it was closed when we got there. Now, I would have been flustered by such an unexpected situation, but not Bob. Let's just go to that diner over there, he said, effortlessly changing plans. For someone as rigid as me, his response was a revelation. I thought by being with him, I could also become adaptable. That's why I decided to marry him. Many people were against our marriage. Some even suggested I could find someone better. Even Mr. Smith, my father-in-law, wasn't very enthusiastic. Are you sure you want to take on my son? It feels like I'm burdening you with him, he asked. Back then, I felt no one really understood Bob's worth. But maybe they were right. Soon after we got married, Bob quit his job without consulting anyone. He just stopped going to work. When both I and Mr. Smith asked him why, Bob casually said, "Why do I need to work if you are making money for both of us?" My father-in-law and I were so taken aback that we didn't know what to say. Why would he rely solely on me for income? I tried to convince Bob many times with the help of my father-in-law, but Bob's way of thinking never changed. Even if I work, I can't earn as much as Catherine does, he'd say. Right after we got married, Bob boldly declared he'd be a freeloader, and I was tempted to divorce him then and there. If he was a young man in his 20s, maybe I would have found it cute, but this attitude was coming from a man nearing 40. Eventually, we reluctantly agreed that he'd take care of the household chores. Bob's parents had divorced a few years earlier. Apparently, before the divorce, Bob's mother wasn't very good at housework. She couldn't do anything, so I never learned from her, Bob said. It seemed like Bob was making excuses, blaming his mother for his lack of domestic skills. True to his word, initially, Bob was clueless about housework. But with consistent praise and guidance, he managed to handle basic tasks. However, that doesn't mean he became exceptionally good at it. Still, he seemed quite pleased with himself. Thanks to me taking care of the house, Catherine can work. You should be grateful, Bob would say confidently, which often bothered me. But I didn't think it was worth arguing over. Yes, Bob, I really appreciate your help, I'd reply, forcing a smile. There were moments when I felt annoyed, but overall, I think we managed to get along quite well. About a year into our marriage, something significant happened. My father-in-law adopted a child, a 9-year-old boy named Jack. Jack seemed like an ordinary boy, but my father-in-law isn't someone who makes decisions without reason. So why did he suddenly adopt Jack? One day, when we were alone, I asked him. He replied, "Promise you won't tell anyone," and then explained. It turns out Jack was the child of an employee my father-in-law was fond of. They had a close relationship, but tragically, Jack's parents died in an accident. They had eloped, and Jack didn't have any close relatives to rely on. Otherwise, he would have ended up in foster care. While my father-in-law wasn't sure if Jack would be happy with us, he decided to adopt him, hoping it would be for the best. I see, that's very kind of you. Although Bob and I didn't have children, we had quite a bit of freedom. Please rely on me if you need anything, I said. My father-in-law smiled warmly upon hearing this. Thankfully, afterward, he did rely on me from time to time, just as I had offered. On nights when he couldn't make it back from work or had pressing commitments, I took care of Jack. At first, James was a bit hesitant, but he quickly warmed up to me. He's either very friendly or trying hard to fit in. Thinking about it made me feel somewhat emotional. Bob, on the other hand, wasn't happy about the situation. It seemed he wasn't welcoming toward Jack. I could understand his mixed feelings, knowing his father took in a stranger, but when I tried talking to Bob, it turned out he had a completely different concern. Adopting him? What's he thinking? This is going to cut into my inheritance. I was hoping to get everything, he said. I couldn't believe my ears. Bob wasn't conflicted about Jack, he was worried about the inheritance. I'm going to talk to Dad about this. I'm not cool with it. One day, Bob said this and went to confront his father. When he returned after a while, to my surprise, he was in a strangely good mood. I cautiously asked a smiling Bob, "How did it go?" He replied, "Oh, it's all good. My share isn't changing." "Huh? What do you mean?" I asked. I always thought that even if someone is adopted, they still get the same stuff from family when someone dies. What's happening? Noticing I didn't understand, Bob explained proudly, "Dad's making Jack give up his right to get stuff when he's gone. It's because I'm his real son." I was surprised. Could the father-in-law who talked about Jack so nicely really be planning to give him nothing? Something seemed wrong. I wasn't sure, but Bob seemed happy about it, saying, "I'm glad. Well, if my father-in-law says so, there must be a reason. Anyway, he's still young. We won't deal with his stuff for a long time. Maybe I'd divorce Bob before then, who knows?" I was thinking about this casually, but things changed quickly. A year later, my father-in-law had an accident and didn't come back. I didn't expect to lose him so soon. I knew him longer than I knew Bob. He was a good man in his job and at home. Hearing the news was sad. I couldn't stop crying, feeling a deep sense of loss. My eyes were swollen, and my head hurt, but I made myself get ready for the funeral. Bob was supposed to be the one mourning the most, but he seemed distant, like he wasn't really feeling it. His dad had died suddenly. Maybe he was so shocked he couldn't believe it was happening. So, I took charge to organize everything for my father-in-law's farewell since Bob seemed distant. During the funeral, I held back my tears as best I could, but the hardest part was seeing Jack cry. Bob, on the other hand, didn't shed a tear. I found it strange. Instead of being sad, he seemed fidgety or even happy. Later, I figured out why. "Bob, something seems off with you. Aren't you sad about your dad?" I wanted to express my worry about his lack of tears, but his response surprised me. "Oh, I'm definitely sad, but I'm also kind of excited." "Oops, I guess I let that slip, huh?" He chuckled. "Come on, Catherine, Dad was the CEO, right? He must have left a lot of money. How much do you think he left behind?" I thought Bob was just lost in thought, but from before the funeral until now, he hadn't shown any grief for his father. He was smiling, thinking about the money he'd inherit. "What's gotten into you?" I exclaimed. "Well, think about it. We're divorced, and my mom isn't getting any of it. I'm his only real child. Jack, being adopted, won't get any inheritance, so it's all mine. You think I can't be happy about that?" Bob had a smirk like he was about to burst into laughter any second. Seeing him like that made me want to slap him. That's how happy he looked. He was genuinely delighted deep down that my father-in-law had passed away. "I can't believe it." "Say whatever you want," I said, feeling like leaving right away. But before that, I had to talk to Bob about Jack. Since my father-in-law was gone, I'd asked Bob to let Jack stay with us for a while. If not, Jack might end up in foster care. I wanted to raise him myself. "Jack, you're okay with taking him in?" Bob surprisingly agreed. He smiled. "Sure, Catherine. What you do has nothing to do with me anymore." Then he handed me a piece of paper. It was green, a divorce paper. "What's this?" I asked, confused. "Let's get a divorce. Now that I've got the inheritance, I don't need my personal ATM anymore," Bob said coldly. For a moment, I couldn't grasp what Bob meant. Did he just call me an ATM and say I'm not needed anymore? "What do you mean?" I asked. Bob smirked proudly and told me, "I got around $1 million from my dad's inheritance, so I don't need you anymore. With this much, I don't have to work, I don't have to please you, and I don't have to bother with chores. Isn't it great?" Bob exaggerated his excitement with big gestures. I was deeply shocked by Bob's behavior. The inheritance was money that came after my father-in-law's death, but Bob acted like he hit the jackpot. He didn't seem to mourn or remember my father-in-law at all. He was genuinely happy. But money can change people. It's common for folks to act differently after coming into a lot of money. Maybe Bob's just getting carried away by the huge sum. Calm down, Bob. Let's talk about this, I said, placing my hand on his shoulder. Bob shrugged off my hand and yelled at me angrily. Shut up, you boring woman. I only married you because my dad introduced us and you were a CEO. But I always felt suffocated with you. It's been hard for me. Bob went on, listing his complaints against me. I was so disappointed when I expected someone better from the arranged date my dad set up, but then ended up with someone plain like you, he continued. If that's how you felt, you could have just said no to the marriage. I never forced you or begged you to marry me, I shot back. I couldn't accept being painted as the villain. So why did you marry me then? If you didn't want to, you could have declined. It's obvious, for the money. Who else would marry someone like you? Bob mocked, laughing at me. Basically, he married me for my wealth, he admitted. It's been a while, so I guess it's safe to say. Bob started, revealing a shocking fact. I had a significant debt. My dad said if I changed my ways and devoted myself to you, he would pay it off. So of course, I would marry you. It meant he never loved me. He just married me for the money. Well, it wasn't fun, but thanks to you, I was saved. Thanks a lot. Seeing Bob laughing so cruelly, I made up my mind. I didn't know this man anymore. I decided not to give him the advice I had planned and started filling out the divorce papers without hesitation. Bob, who had been pushing for the divorce, seemed a bit surprised to see this. Hey, are you thinking of getting a divorce now? Fine, here's the divorce papers, I said after writing them, feeling a sense of accomplishment. Now we were total strangers. Yeah, whatever happens now doesn't concern the other. You can live with that kid, Jack, and I can hang out with younger women. We're free. Bob was ecstatic. From what I could see, he hadn't cheated during our marriage, which surprised me. I never suspected it, but that was interesting. Bob, if you were this happy about it, you should have divorced sooner. I had my reasons. I wanted the money. Bob carelessly stuffed the divorce papers into his bag and left the house in a hurry. I didn't feel right staying in the house where I'd lived with Bob. I thought about starting fresh somewhere new with Jack. It seemed like a good time to sell the house and move. I wanted to live close to my parents' place. I think it would help both Jack and me. Jack would have to change schools, but he said that's okay. It's a bit sad, but now we can look for a new place without any reservations. Finding a new place was a bit tricky, but after thinking it over, I made a decision. What mattered most were the short distance to my parents' place and the great location. It's expensive, but considering Jack, I believe it's the best option out there. Jack came along to see the property, and his eyes sparkled at the sight of the luxurious house. It's spacious and beautifully decorated, with lots of storage space, which was important to me. Surprisingly, it even has a pool. I didn't really need one, but seeing Jack so excited made it worth it. Wow, this is amazing, Jack exclaimed. It didn't really matter where I lived, but seeing him happy was what counted the most. And so, we moved in. It took some time for both Jack and me to get used to it, but eventually, our new house became a comforting place for us. Around that time, I got a call from Bob. He sounded desperate and said he wanted to meet and apologize immediately. I had a feeling why he suddenly wanted to talk. I could have ignored him, but since he was so insistent, I decided to meet him. I left Jack with my mother and headed to the diner we agreed upon. Bob was already there, sitting in a corner booth, looking pale and about to cry. Catherine, he called out as I approached. I gave Bob a cold look as he stood up. What do you want, Bob? We're supposed to be strangers now. Don't say that. The truth is, my dad had debts. Damn, I never thought he'd. Wait, didn't you get $1 million from your inheritance? Just use that to pay off your debts, I said, cutting him off. No, the debts are more than what I inherited, Bob explained. He had more debt than the money he got. Bob inherited both money and debts from someone. I didn't know I'd have to pay off the debts too. Bob looked defeated. Catherine, you must have some savings. We used to be married. Please help me, he begged with a flattering smile. But did Bob forget what he said before? After all the times you made me feel small, even calling me an ATM, why would I want to help you now? It was bold of him to ask for help. He said he wanted to say sorry over the phone, but he hadn't yet. You really regretted marrying me, huh? After everything you said, now you want help? Well, back then, I never thought I'd be in this situation, Bob tried to explain. His sudden need for help surprised me. Maybe he thought he wouldn't need my money, but now he's asking for it. Sorry, I can't help you. I don't have the money. What do you mean? I heard your business is doing great. Bob argued. That's not true. I wish he'd stop blaming me for his mistakes. I'm not lying. I just don't have money to lend. Not every bank lends to everyone, right? Why would I lend if I don't expect it back? Bob looked guilty for a moment, remembering how harsh he'd been to me, but he didn't apologize. He was too proud. Why are you being so cold? Don't you care about me? Oh, did you forget what you said when we divorced? We're strangers now, nothing to do with each other. Weren't those your words? I couldn't understand how he could act like he was the victim. How can he ignore everything he said before? I might have said that, but I didn't mean it. I never thought things would end up like this, Bob said sadly, leaning on the table. I thought about the life insurance, but my dad's lawyer said I'm not the beneficiary. Oh, really? I chuckled at his words, which surprised Bob. You don't think Catherine would be the one your dad left it to? No, it's not me. Then why did you laugh? Just felt a bit sorry for you, that's all. If it was insurance, I wouldn't have inherited the debts. Exactly. That's why my father-in-law had Jack give up the inheritance. He left something for Jack through life insurance. Jack was the beneficiary of my father-in-law's life insurance. Is that all you wanted to talk about? If so, I'm leaving. There's nothing I can do for you, I said firmly. Wait, can't we start over? I was just upset about my dad back then, but I truly care about you, Catherine, Bob pleaded. You mean you only see me as a dollar sign, right? I know, Bob tried to deny it, but I wasn't fooled again. After all, I don't have a single dime to give to someone like you. Well, someone important is waiting for me at home. With that, I left the diner. I could hear Bob crying out, but it didn't affect me. I needed to hurry home. Jack might be hungry, or maybe he got something from his grandma. I quickly headed to the subway station. As for Bob, I heard he's working multiple part-time jobs to pay off his debts. With no work experience, qualifications, or motivation, he couldn't get a full-time job anywhere. I once saw him working at a convenience store while I was on my way to a client. He looked much older and thinner, quite shocking. Bob, who had been relying on others, was now facing the consequences. There's no sympathy for him. On the other hand, I'm living peacefully with Jack. We even argue sometimes now. It's saddening when Jack ignores me after a fight, but I try to see it as a sign that he's opening up to me. I plan to support him until he can stand on his own 2 feet. That's probably what my father-in-law wished for, and it's my goal in life now. What are you doing here, Grandma? When I got to my son's house, I was shocked by what I saw. In the dim light, my grandchild was sitting outside the door without shoes. Aren't you cold? Yeah. Without thinking, I hugged my grandchild. I remembered the weather report saying it might snow tonight. How could my son and his wife leave such a young child outside? I started to get angry. Why are you sitting out here then? My grandchild, trying not to cry, said, I'm not allowed in. Why not? It's my brother's birthday, and only real family is allowed. What? I raised my voice under the cold sky. What do they mean by real family? My grandchild, overwhelmed with emotion, began to cry loudly, his face a mess with tears and a runny nose. Let's go somewhere warm, okay? It's cold here. You must be hungry too, right? We'll get there soon. Near my son's house, there was a pub run by an old friend. I couldn't be picky about the place. Thinking they would welcome us, I opened the door. Oh, you're back again. Got a bit of a situation. My grandchild peeked out from behind me. Is that your grandchild? Yes, that's right. I immediately contacted someone. What my son and his wife were doing was unacceptable. Leaving my precious grandchild like this. They're going to face the consequences. As a mother and mother-in-law, I was ready to act. By calling the real family, my son and his wife were about to face their reckoning. My name is Veronica, and I just turned 60 this year. My husband, whom I had been with for many years, passed away from an illness about 2 years ago. I live alone in the house he left me. Maybe it's time to live together, my son had suggested when he returned home after a long time. I'm fine on my own. I can manage, I told him. But it must be boring alone, right? Indeed, I'm alone, but somehow I don't feel lonely in this house. That's a shame. Sally, my son's wife, who came with him, seemed a bit relieved. My reluctance to live together was largely due to her presence. She was my son's second wife. Sally, you must feel more comfortable without me around, right? What? No, it's not like that. At the time, I was a bit standoffish. I wasn't particularly close or distant with Sally, but we never quite clicked. My son and his wife have 2 children, but their daughter Natalia is my son's stepdaughter. I've heard he took her in somewhat reluctantly. Their younger son, John, was born shortly after they remarried. By the way, where is Natalia? Oh, Natalia is at a friend's house. I see. Now that I think about it, they rarely brought Natalia when they visited my house. And even when they did, I sensed a distance in their interactions with her. It wasn't like this with his first wife. What changed? I believe my son's first marriage ended due to his wife's infidelity. Although I had exchanged contact information with his ex-wife, we never stayed in touch. It was about 4 years ago when my son appeared with Sally, his new wife. What surprised me even more was that she was already pregnant. Nice to meet you, Veronica. Nice to meet you too. At that time, I felt it wasn't my place to interfere if my son had chosen her. But as issues involving me began to arise, so did my questions. Sally's true nature started to emerge, perhaps because she found my presence bothersome. The recent incident with Natalia was a clear example. Is Natalia really at a friend's? I inquired. I already told you that, she replied, clearly annoyed. But little did I know, this was just the beginning. What's with the raised voice, Sally? My son entered, sensing tension. It's nothing. Sally brushed it off, shooting me a glare before turning to John. I suspected they were hiding something about Natalia from me, judging by Sally's defensive reaction. But at that moment, I had no way to confirm it. Well, we should head back now. Okay, bring Natalia next time. My son's expression darkened at my request. It seemed both he and Sally were aware of the situation regarding Natalia. We'll bring her next time. Good, please do. They exchanged whispers, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. After that, they stopped visiting altogether. Perhaps they sensed my suspicions. Nevertheless, I couldn't stop worrying about Natalia, so I came up with a plan. Hello, I have a suggestion. What is it? About living together. Are you considering moving in with us? I've thought it over, and having you here might be nice. That's great. I'll start getting ready then. The sooner, the better, right? Really? You're sure? Yes, I don't want to be a burden on you. That would be a big help. And so it was decided that I would move in with my son's family. It wasn't because I disliked living alone. My main reason was to reconnect with Natalia, whom I hadn't seen in a long time, and make sure she was okay. I had considered visiting, but the distance made frequent trips impractical, as it was nearly 2 hours by train. I hoped this move would resolve things, but there was a lingering unease. Still, I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. I immediately began preparing to move to my son's house, packing up my belongings and arranging for movers. 2 weeks later, I settled into living with them. Let's get along well from now on. From today, think of this place as your own home and relax. Thank you, I appreciate it. After the greetings, I went to see Natalia. I was speechless when I saw her. She should be 9 years old now, but she looked so thin. Natalia, do you remember me? Grandma? Yes, that's right. Grandma will live here with you from today. Really? Yay! Her smile, though fragile, was filled with effort. Alongside relief, I felt a deep sadness at how much she had deteriorated. It was clear that Natalia held the lowest position in the house, but I couldn't afford to make a scene that might worsen her situation. So I took her out under the guise of helping me. I'm going to do some shopping, okay? Oh, are you taking Natalia too? Yes, she's going to help me out a bit. All right. Sally appeared displeased, likely wanting to keep Natalia away from me. Whenever we went out, I made sure to treat Natalia to her favorite foods and take her to different places. Thanks to that, she seemed to regain some color and energy compared to when we first started living together. Natalia, what do you usually do at home? Well, I read books in my room or draw. Don't you play with your mom and dad? It was difficult to ask, but I was driven by a desire to help her. Dad and Mom always play with John. When I want to join, they tell me to go to my room. That's sad. From now on, Grandma will play with you a lot, okay? Yeah, it seemed more like neglect or even abuse rather than just poor parenting. Natalia had gained some weight since I arrived, but it was clear she hadn't been properly cared for before. I was determined to protect her no matter what. Then one day, after being out all morning due to a commitment with a friend, I returned home in the evening. What's happening? As I entered the house, I heard Sally's angry voice. What are you doing? Do it like I told you earlier. I'm sorry. It appeared Sally was scolding Natalia, and the situation seemed tense. Sally, what's going on? She's frightened. Natalia was crouched down, holding her head. This kind of incident must have happened many times when I wasn't around, or else Natalia wouldn't react like this. I positioned myself between Sally and Natalia. Don't interfere, this is part of teaching her. What happened just now? She didn't follow my instructions. Sally seemed upset. When I calmed her down and listened, it turned out she had asked Natalia to do the laundry, but Natalia accidentally used fabric softener instead of detergent. Everyone makes mistakes, right? Especially since Natalia is only 8. That's not an excuse, Sally snapped. Calm down, I insisted, but Sally snapped at me. If you're going to complain, then do it yourself. What? You're the one who started complaining. She left Natalia and me there and walked away. The atmosphere in the house was becoming unbearable. Grandma, it's okay. Don't worry, let's do it together. With a mix of anger and determination, I knew I couldn't let this continue. Later, I brought up the incident with my son. Don't you think this is too much? Well, Natalia is already 8 years old, so we thought it's time she learns to do various things, my son said, seeming uneasy. It's good to teach her, but what happened last time was excessive. That's too much, even for teaching. Well, it's your child. Aren't you supposed to take proper care of her? My son, perhaps injured by my words, responded with something shocking. I didn't even want to take her in the first place. What? Then why did you? I thought maybe she'd be useful, but she's turning out just like her mother. He continued to criticize his ex-wife, sounding more like he was trying to justify himself rather than expressing genuine anger. I was stunned by his words. Anyway, please pay more attention to Natalia. She's lonely too. I know, he said, but despite his words, my son and his wife continued to make Natalia do chores like cleaning, laundry, and even going shopping alone. Meanwhile, I quietly supported her without their knowledge. Despite being treated unfairly, Natalia never complained and worked diligently. I couldn't help but admire her determination. Curious about her motivation, I asked her why she was putting in so much effort. Why do you try so hard, Natalia? Because John's birthday is coming soon, she answered joyfully, but I could only watch. Why does such a good child have to suffer like this? You're a great big sister, Natalia. Yeah, I'm John's big sister. I refrained from reprimanding my son and Sally, hoping Natalia's positive spirit would endure. Gradually, their behavior seemed to soften, and a period of calm settled in. I need a little help with something. What do you need help with? Yeah, I could use an extra hand. Sure, okay, thank you. Can you help right now? Now, I suppose I have to. Let me get ready and head out. One of my friends had opened a pub about 6 months ago. Today, their usual part-time worker was unavailable, so they asked for my assistance. Fortunately, the pub wasn't too far from my son's house. I'll be out for a while. Okay. By the way, we're celebrating John's birthday today. What? But his birthday is the day after tomorrow. We changed our minds. They had decided this while I was away, probably hoping to exclude me. I thought things had improved between us recently, but I was mistaken. Are you leaving now? Yes, I am. Don't worry, we'll enjoy the birthday together as a family. I left the house, but Sally's displeased expression lingered in my mind. At the friend's pub, I helped with various tasks. Before I knew it, it was already past 9 p.m. Is it this late already? Thank you so much. Your help was really appreciated. It's fine. Working like this once in a while is good. We're always waiting for you. See you later. With those words echoing in my mind, I walked down the dark street, dreading the birthday celebration at home. As I finally reached the house, I was shocked by what I saw. Confusion set in, but I quickly focused on Natalia. Why are you here? Did they say something? I'm not allowed in. Only the real family can celebrate John's birthday, so I can't. Natalia's words echoed under the cold sky, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. What do they mean by real family? Overwhelmed with emotion, Natalia began crying loudly, tears streaming down her face. I knew we couldn't stay there any longer. Yes, my young daughter was left outside by my son despite looking forward to it so much. We need to leave. I decided, feeling we had no choice but to move. Let's go somewhere warm, okay? It's cold here. And you must be hungry too, right? We'll get there soon. I retraced our steps and headed towards the pub run by my friend. I couldn't be choosy about the place. I knew my friend would welcome us. As I opened the door, oh, you're back again. There's a situation. Natalia peeked out from behind me. I understand. Let's sit down and talk. But first, let me make a quick phone call. I took out my smartphone and immediately dialed someone. I wouldn't let my son and his wife get away with leaving my precious granddaughter out in the cold. What happened? My friend asked, concerned. It's about Natalia's parents. I began, explaining today's events and the ongoing situation with gestures and expressions. What? Your son did this. Why didn't you do something? My friend was incredulous. They wouldn't listen to anything I said, I replied, feeling frustrated. That's unbelievable. Could it be that Sally doesn't like Natalia because she's your son's child from his previous marriage? But Sally knew about Natalia before they remarried. Could she have married just to mistreat her? I hope not. My friend's suggestion was deeply troubling. If true, it meant my son might also be involved. Regardless of the reason, they needed to be held accountable. Just then, Natalia's stomach growled loudly. Right, you must be hungry. Can you prepare something for her to eat? How about an omelette? Natalia's face lit up like a blooming flower. I'll go make it. Wait here, I said. Natalia nodded eagerly, and I gently stroked her head. The omelette was ready in about 5 minutes, and Natalia ate heartily. About 30 minutes later, the door opened, revealing a familiar face. It's been a while, Olivia. Long time no see. The person I had called was Olivia, my son's ex-wife. Natalia, do you remember me? You're my mom, right? Yes, that's right, sweetie. Natalia immediately hugged her. Seeing them together brought tears to my eyes, but I held them back. What's going on? Olivia asked. Sorry for the sudden call. There's a serious situation. What happened? I explained Natalia's situation to Olivia. If only I had been more responsible, this wouldn't have happened. Don't blame yourself. It's not your fault. Olivia reassured me. I have something to say too. Olivia began to explain how her divorce unfolded and why Natalia ended up with my son. As she spoke, it was difficult to comprehend the events that had transpired. Is that true? It may be hard to believe, but it's all true. Unbelievable. The truth emerged that Olivia had been wrongly accused by my son and Sally. Despite hearing about Olivia's alleged infidelity leading to the divorce, it was actually my son who had been unfaithful with Sally. Olivia's account seemed genuine. Natalia's reaction upon seeing her real mother further affirmed it. Moreover, the lawyer my ex-husband hired was in on it. No matter what I said, they wouldn't believe me. I never forgot about Natalia, not even once. I placed my hand on Olivia's shoulder. Don't worry, I'm on your side, no matter what. Thank you, but what do we do now? We pondered how to resolve the current situation. At that moment, several customers were present at my friend's pub. A man stood up and approached us. Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear. Maybe you can help. And you are. He handed me his business card, which read attorney. I glanced between the card and the man. Are you sure? Yes, if that lawyer is genuine, I can forgive them. We unexpectedly found a strong ally in attorney Daniel, who offered to represent us pro bono. Deciding to return home for the night to avoid suspicion, I spoke to Olivia. Please take care of Natalia, and I'm sorry for everything. Don't apologize. I actually thought you might hate me. Not at all. I should have reached out to you sooner. We were united in defending Natalia. Over the next 2 months, we maintained our routine, ensuring Natalia's safety. Thankfully, my son and Sally were preoccupied with John, leaving Natalia unharmed. Then Olivia called. Everything's ready. I'll be there soon. Sure, let's show those two what they deserve. 3 days later, Olivia and attorney Daniel arrived at my son's house. The couple was taken aback by the unexpected visit. What are you doing here? What does this old flame want? My son exclaimed. Olivia remained composed. We're here to file a lawsuit against both of you. What? Are you out of your mind? Attorney Daniel then handed over a document. This document states that Natalia should live with Olivia. You expect us to accept this just because you say so. Shall I explain? First, the lawyer you hired doesn't exist, does he? The couple looked visibly shaken, sweat forming on their brows. My investigation revealed there's no such person registered with the Bar Association, and he had a criminal record for fraud. You knew this, right? He was your friend. I confronted my son, who remained silent, staring at the floor. Sally, however, was defiant. Don't be ridiculous. You're making baseless accusations. I couldn't hold back any longer. Enough. Weren't you involved with Olivia even before your divorce? That's not true. But the timing of your child's birth suggests you were still married. Sally was left speechless. Just admit it, you took Natalia just to spite Olivia, didn't you? That's not true. It was his idea. She pointed accusingly at my son. What? Why me? You said it was better to take her since she's the daughter of that woman. We recorded everything. I revealed that I had been recording all our conversations with my smartphone. I'm ashamed to call such a man my son. Wait, Mom. I don't want to hear Mom from you. Both of you will face consequences, possibly even jail time. But what about John? You're right. Don't worry. If necessary, I'll take good care of him. With that, they fell silent. Olivia and I left them in their despair and walked out of the house. A week later, we were settled in my old home. We couldn't leave Natalia with them, but they continued their resistance until the end. It seems they intend to sue us, but even if they do, you're right, we have all the evidence and Daniel's support. They're just tightening the noose around their own necks. It turned out they had indeed hired a real lawyer, but it proved futile. The trial ended decisively in our favor. They lost and were saddled with hefty alimony payments and other charges. A week after the trial, my son reached out to me. I'm sorry for everything. Please help me. You're mistaken if you think you should apologize to me. You're the only one I can turn to, Mom. His voice sounded weak. Unfortunately, I no longer have a son. Don't contact me again. With that, I hung up. Following the incident, my son and Sally's relationship deteriorated, leading to their divorce. They both had to work tirelessly to pay off their debts, and John went to live with Sally's parents. All that remained for them was financial struggle. We'll visit soon, okay? Come with Mom. We'll be waiting. Since then, I've returned to my home, living as I please. My happiness now comes from visits with Natalia and Olivia. My future looks bright. Why won't you talk to me? I asked. I've decided not to talk to people I don't know. I understand. I'll go away. Living with my husband's parents, they completely ignored me. I thought my mother-in-law might ignore me, but I never expected my father-in-law to treat me the same way. There was a reason why they changed. It was because my sister-in-law, who didn't like me, came back home. Since she returned, our peaceful life together turned upside down. Don't regret it, okay? You think I'll regret leaving? Think again, meanie. I packed my things and left my in-laws' house. Just 3 days after I left, there was chaos in their home. I met my husband at work. He worked in sales and often came to my office, and I was his main contact. As we spent more time together in meetings, I started to like him. He was caring and kind, tall, and not exactly what you'd call handsome, but he had a charming personality. He was well liked, but for some reason, he said he liked me, and we started dating. When we talked, he told me he grew up in a normal family with parents and a sister. I lost my parents when I was young and grew up in an orphanage. It was a hard thing for me, but when we started dating, I told him about my past. He said, "That sounds tough, but don't worry, I'll always be here for you." Not long after, he asked me to marry him. He always wanted our relationship to lead to marriage and quickly introduced me to his parents. When I told them about growing up in the orphanage, they listened carefully and reassured me it wouldn't affect our marriage. It made me really happy. They even said that my background didn't matter in becoming their daughter-in-law, which made me feel really good. But my sister-in-law, who was very close to her brother, seemed surprised, asking, "You grew up in an orphanage?" My husband had to scold her. Looking back, she probably didn't like me from the start. I didn't think much of it then, just assuming we were still getting to know each other. Before we got married, my husband and I talked about moving in with his parents. We thought about it seriously, but I decided to keep my job. My husband was going to be transferred soon, and although I considered quitting to move with him, my career was going well, and I had just been given more responsibilities at work. We discussed it and agreed he would move alone. After our wedding, I wanted to enjoy being newlyweds for a while. I even thought about visiting my husband during long weekends to have a May vacation together. Moving in with my in-laws right after getting married seemed a bit overwhelming, but my husband probably felt more comfortable living with them. Also, he might have wanted us to live together to ease his mom's worries. Since I lost my parents when I was young, I always wished for a family, so living with them didn't seem entirely bad. Besides, my in-laws had always been nice to me, and I grew to like them. It was tough juggling work and my role as a daughter-in-law, but having a family made me happy and complete. One day, my father-in-law came to me with a surprising request. It was the beginning of some trouble in our seemingly happy living arrangement. It happened when my usually anxious mother-in-law, who often acted bossy towards my father-in-law, was out shopping. I was getting ready to do some cleaning on my day off when my father-in-law asked to talk to me. "What's up?" "Well, I don't want my wife to find out, but I need to take time off from work." "Time off?" I asked, surprised. He explained that he'd been having problems with his boss and coworkers, and his health had gotten so bad that he had no choice but to take a break. My mother-in-law is a nice person, but she's always anxious and a bit over-worried. Living with them, I notice how she tends to fret a lot, and my father-in-law walked on eggshells around her to avoid upsetting her. He had always been on the thin side, but lately I realized he seemed to have lost some weight. It would have been nice if my mother-in-law genuinely cared about my father-in-law's weight loss. But when he took a sick day because of a cold before, she said, "A cold? Everyone else at work is climbing the career ladder. You're always taking days off for health reasons. That's why you're not getting promoted." Instead of being concerned, she tended to criticize him. He probably tried his best to keep going, no matter how bad he felt. But his health got worse, and he secretly took time off to go to the hospital. He was struggling both mentally and physically. With him leaving work early, often being late, and calling in sick, there was talk about him needing to take a break from work. But he didn't want to upset my mother-in-law at any cost. If he suggested taking time off, she'd likely get really angry. Also, my father-in-law didn't earn much, and he relied on extra pay from working overtime. Taking time off would mean a significant drop in income. If he told my husband, he might tell my mother-in-law, so he came to me, asking if I could help with the bills. If I mentioned taking a break, she might even leave me, he said. Hearing that hurt, I was grateful to my in-laws who had accepted me warmly, regardless of my past in an orphanage. Wanting to support him, I decided to help him out during this tough time. "Okay, I'll send you money every month. Use it for expenses." "I'm really sorry. I'll try to get better soon and go back to work. Thank you so much." After that, my father-in-law continued to pretend to go to work while I sent money to his bank account for living expenses. My mother-in-law wasn't very thorough with checking her bank statements, so she didn't notice my transfers. He'd act like he was going to work but instead went to a mental health clinic or went for walks in the peaceful mountains. Over time, he started looking better. I thought he might go back to work soon, but then something unexpected happened. After a fight with her husband, my sister-in-law went back to her parents' home. There's nothing like being back home. I thought I'd lose my mind if I stayed with that stupid husband of mine. I'll be here for a while. Can you make meals for me too? I knew from the start that my sister-in-law didn't like me. At our first family meeting, my husband was upset because she clearly showed her disapproval. During our wedding, she had a sour look the whole time and even told me straight out, "My brother looks great, but you. He could have married someone prettier." She openly judged me for being raised in an institution, saying it was embarrassing that I didn't have parents at the wedding. However, she got married before us and had already moved out, so I thought I wouldn't have to deal with her much. That's why I thought it would be okay to live with them. If she had still been living at home, I wouldn't have even considered moving in, knowing how she would treat me every day. I thought her stay was just temporary because of her marriage problems and expected her to leave in a few days. Even though she was stern with my father-in-law, my mother-in-law had never been harsh towards me. Even if my sister-in-law made mean comments, I believed my mother-in-law would defend me. But I was wrong. One day, when I came back from work, my mother-in-law's behavior seemed strange. "Is something bothering you?" I asked. She seemed distant, not talking to me like usual. When I asked her what was wrong, she said, "Did you know you've been talking about me behind my back?" "What? I've never said anything bad about you. You've always been kind to me, and I'm really thankful. Why would I say bad things about you? You've been acting like the perfect daughter-in-law, but you've been talking behind my back." "Whatever," she said, leaving the room. In the hallway, my sister-in-law was smirking. "Looks like you're not in her good books anymore. Did your true colors come out? Being from an orphanage, your background really does matter, huh? It's best not to gossip about people, you know." I haven't said anything bad about her. "Oh, the neighbors seem to have heard everything. When I came back home after so long, they told me you've been talking badly about her all the time." "What? Who are these neighbors?" Well, it's been a while since I got married and moved out, so I kind of forgot their names. I never said any of that. Stop making things up. Oh, how disrespectful. Mom, she's calling me a liar and being mean to me, my sister-in-law said as she walked into my mother-in-law's room. After that, my sister-in-law's mean behavior got worse. She claimed I told her to sleep in the hallway and take the last turn for a bath because she's just a guest. She complained to my mother-in-law about every little thing. Every time, I had to explain I hadn't said or done any of it. But my mother-in-law seemed to believe my sister-in-law and be influenced by her. My sister-in-law stayed longer, making me wonder if she planned to stay forever. With all these worries, I went home feeling sad. I'm back. Before, my mother-in-law would warmly say, "Welcome back," but now it was quiet. "I'll start making dinner," I said, stepping into the living room. I was surprised. Usually, my sister-in-law would rush me to make dinner, but now my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and sister-in-law were eating sushi together. Surprised, my sister-in-law said, "Oh, looks like someone who isn't really family is here. You were planning on having sushi, were you?" My mother-in-law kept eating without looking at me, watching TV. "If you wanted sushi, you should have told me. I came home right after shopping," I said. "Ha! No one said they wanted that," my sister-in-law replied, not even looking at me. "Hey, Mom, Dad, I went out with my friends during the day and got some delicious pudding. Let's eat together," my sister-in-law said, ignoring me. They all started eating the pudding. I was tired from work and didn't have the energy to argue, so I went to my room without eating. The next day, my sister-in-law said she was going out with friends and asked me to drive her to the station. I said no because it was a weekday and I had work. Even if we were going in the same direction, it was a different route, and she wanted to leave around noon. I couldn't do it. "Just take the day off. It's fine. Your cute little sis-in-law just wants a ride. She hasn't had a chance to relax since she got married, right? Can't you be a bit nicer to her now?" she said. "With all due respect, didn't you go out with friends last night after getting a late call? It seems like you've been going out almost every day since you came home. I have work. Please take the bus or train." My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were talking quietly, but I was done and left for work. However, that night, the event that made me decide to leave this house happened. I got delayed at work and came home after buying groceries, expecting to face some criticism. It was raining heavily when I left the office, and I got soaked just getting in and out of the car. I wondered what nasty surprise was waiting for me tonight. But when I got home, they were all eating takeout again, just like the day before. No hello, acting like they didn't see me. But I was used to it. I looked out into the courtyard from the hallway and saw something in the middle of the garden. Looking closer, I saw it was my stuff. My designer bag that I bought with my first paycheck, shoes that were a birthday gift from my husband, and even my work computer, all wet. I was shocked, and my sister-in-law said with a smirk, "Having the strangers' things in the house grossed me out, so I threw them out." Flaunting a designer bag like that, how arrogant of you. Neither of my in-laws said anything about her terrible behavior. "Why didn't you stop her? Have I done something to you? Do you really believe her lies about me bad-mouthing you and bullying her? Aren't you upset with her for what she did?" I asked. My mother-in-law avoided my eyes and stayed silent. "Why won't you say anything?" I asked again. "I can't talk to strangers. I can't be friendly with someone who's not family," my mother-in-law replied, not even looking at me. My sister-in-law grinned, waiting for me to respond. "Wait, where's my father-in-law? I've been the one supporting him during his time off. I've been the one handling finances in this house. I did it out of gratitude, but shouldn't he stand up for me now? Surely he'd be on my side." Hoping for his support, I looked at him, but he walked past me without a word and went into his room. That was it for me. "I see. I've had enough." "Oh, are you upset?" "I'm sorry. Honestly, I never liked you from the start. You know, being from an institution and all. Just don't regret leaving," my sister-in-law said. "As if I would. Good riddance," I replied. I packed my things and got ready to leave right away. Only my father-in-law seemed worried because he relied on me financially. But even he didn't try to stop me or speak up for me. I was done with his indifference. Although my husband's work assignment was far away, I just wanted to get out of that house as soon as possible. I quickly got into my car and drove to him. I never talked to my husband about any of this. I doubt my mother-in-law told him about my sister-in-law coming back home. If he knew, he would have reached out to me because he knows I don't get along with her. but my husband never mentioned anything about my sister-in-law in his calls or messages. I never doubted my husband's behavior before, but maybe she's manipulating him, feeding him lies about things. Even now, as I go to him, he might treat me the same way they did. My heart was heavy, feeling suspicious even toward my husband, whom I trust the most. If he's siding with them, maybe divorce is the only option. That's how distressed I felt. When I arrived at his out-of-state apartment, he hadn't returned yet, probably busy since it was the end of the month. As I waited, my husband came in energetically, maybe noticing the lights. "What? You're here? You should have told me you were coming. I would have come back sooner." What a pleasant surprise. "No, just seeing your face," he said with a big smile. Seeing him happy to see me after all that happened at my in-laws' house, mixed with relief and humiliation, and I couldn't hold back my tears. "What's wrong? Did I do something? Seriously, what's going on?" he asked, concerned. It seemed my husband had no clue about the treatment I endured at his parents' house. I gathered myself, knowing I needed to explain everything clearly to him. I started recounting everything. How I've been financially helping his father, who took medical leave without telling his wife. How his sister returned and was now staying at their parents' house. How she lied about me to his mother, turning her against me. How they treated me like an outsider, ignored me, and even ruined my belongings by leaving them out in the rain. Through tears and pauses, I poured out everything to him. Finally, I made it clear that I couldn't go back to that house ever again. And if he couldn't support me on this, I would want a divorce. My husband apologized for being too focused on work and not checking in on me more often. He regretted his family's behavior towards me. He assured me I didn't have to go back there or even talk to them again. Even if I forgave them someday, he was firm about cutting ties with his parents and sister. He also promised not to provide any more financial aid to his father. That night, I felt a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. The tension I'd been carrying melted away, and I slept peacefully by his side. After leaving my in-laws' house, I never went back. Commuting from my husband's out-of-state place wasn't practical, but I had already talked to my company about working remotely. My job didn't require me to be in the office all the time, and many of my colleagues worked from home too. Although I still had to visit the office a few times a month, some colleagues lived even farther away, so working remotely wasn't a problem. Living with my in-laws and dealing with my sister-in-law's bullying, I hadn't truly experienced married life. But now we could finally live like newlyweds. As I set up my remote workstation, as expected, my sister-in-law contacted me. It turned out that the day after I left their house was my father-in-law's payday. My mother-in-law usually takes out a certain amount and transfers it to their household account, but this time she couldn't. It was only then that she realized I had been helping them financially during my father-in-law's time off. "Hey, why didn't you tell me you were covering the living expenses?" He asked me not to, saying he didn't want you to know, so I kept it to myself. "Anyway, we're running out of money for living expenses, and there's no one to cook or do laundry. The place is a mess. As his wife, you need to come back and take care of these things and send money quickly." How heartless. I already told you, didn't I? I have no intention of going back to that house or being treated like your maid. Why should I help people who hate me, ruin my things, and treat me like this? Aren't you his wife? Without your help, we can't pay the bills or even shop. That's exactly why I'm saying it. I'm an outsider, so it's none of my business, right? I hung up, ignoring my sister-in-law's complaints. She and my mother-in-law kept bothering me with calls and messages, but I ignored all of them. Even after my husband returned from work, they kept calling persistently. When my husband finally answered, he told them firmly, "I won't forgive you for how you treated her, and I'm not sending her back to you. I'm not coming back either. I don't see you as my family anymore. Leave my wife alone, or you'll regret it." Considering my sister-in-law adored her brother and my mother-in-law heavily relied on him, they were probably shocked. A few days later, I got a call from my father-in-law. He said living with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law was getting too hard, and he begged me to continue the financial help. I'm grateful they accepted me when I married, despite growing up in an orphanage, but they didn't support me when I needed it, despite all the financial help I provided. I don't owe them anything. Why should I help those who joined others in ignoring me? I'll never assist you again. And with that, I ended the call. Later on, my persistent mother-in-law and sister-in-law shamelessly showed up at my workplace. Since I was already working remotely and had a bad feeling about them, I had informed my company about the situation. Security was alerted right away. They caused a scene, demanding that the company make me send money back home. When my husband heard about it, he said, "Report them to the police." My colleagues were supportive, saying, "I can't believe you had to live with those people. Focus on your remote work with your husband." As for my in-laws, my father-in-law's health declined under the pressure from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, and he eventually quit his job. My sister-in-law tried to return to her husband's family, but he refused to take her back. The town quickly learned about her drama at my workplace, causing an uproar at her in-law's place. The real reason for their fight was her affair, and this incident added to their problems, leading to an immediate decision to divorce. Left without a home, my in-laws and sister-in-law moved to a cheap apartment, managing with part-time jobs. As for my husband and me, we're finally enjoying peaceful days, feeling mentally and physically fulfilled. Recently, we found out we're expecting a child, and we couldn't be happier. We're eagerly awaiting the day we meet our baby, cherishing our time together. My mom's cooking is way better than yours. While some leaned back on the dining chairs and others sat up straight, the four of us gathered around a table full of delicious dishes. Normally, we wouldn't have such a fancy meal, but today we were eating with my in-laws. Keith, smirking even while eating, looked at me and said, "But I made that dish. Your usual bad cook." I responded to Keith's comment and then glanced at my parents-in-law to see their reactions. "What did you say?" My parents-in-law looked confused. The atmosphere grew tense. For a moment, it felt like time stopped, and everyone just sat there, unable to move or speak with their forks in their hands. I thought it was time to stop hiding my feelings. I didn't want to keep up my relationships with Keith and his parents while secretly feeling so unhappy. I was ready to fight back. I had planned my revenge on Keith for a long time, and today was the day. That's why I left our daughter, Naomi, with my parents. I didn't want her to see this ugly side of things or get upset by the conversation. I was determined to reach my goal and felt secretly pleased about it. My name is Rachel Davis. I'm 34 years old and my daughter, Naomi, just started elementary school. I'm a typical housewife, living a comfortable life. Even though I call myself typical, I married into a wealthy family so I can enjoy some luxury. However, I wasn't overly greedy. All I wanted was to be happy with my husband, Keith. Most people would think we have a happy life, but there was one thing that troubled me. Keith, who is 39 this year, had been coming home late more often recently. He's always had late nights since we got married because he works at a big company and has a lot of responsibilities. I figured his job kept him busy, so I didn't complain. Plus, on his days off, Keith would spend time with Naomi and sometimes take us on family trips. Keith had never complained since we got married. Even though he often felt stress from work, he always tried his best. I thought it wouldn't be fair to suspect him of something like infidelity. In many families, stress and complaints can lead to arguments, but that wasn't the case for us. Keith didn't have bad habits like drinking too much or being mean. He was quite respectable. Sometimes I admired him, thinking that people from good families tend to have good manners. However, something changed this year. Sometimes he would respond to me in a distant way, even when I talked about ordinary things. Recently, he started spending more time on his smartphone, and our conversations became less frequent. I thought it might be due to work, so I didn't question him about it. One weekday evening, our daughter Naomi came home from elementary school and said, "Daddy was with someone I don't know." Upon hearing Naomi's statement, I stopped slicing vegetables in the kitchen. "What do you mean?" I hadn't planned on asking Naomi about such things, but with Keith's recent strange behavior, doubts had started creeping in. I was curious, so I gently probed for more information from Naomi. "What did this person look like? Was it a woman?" "I don't know," Naomi replied. "Okay, how old did she seem to be?" "Probably around your age, Mom." "All right, thanks." With that limited information, I couldn't be sure if Keith was cheating. Given his high position, it could have been work-related. But something felt off. Troubled by this uneasy feeling, I decided to go somewhere specific the next day. "I'm sorry for bringing this up suddenly," I apologized. "No, it's okay. I understand the situation with your husband now. What exactly would you like me to look into?" Timothy asked. Lost in my thoughts while sitting on the couch, I watched as Timothy spread out some documents on the glass table in front of me. We have a plan where we can take photos for evidence or have our staff interact closely with your husband to gather information, and then, Timothy explained the details carefully. I think I'd like to go with this option, I said, pointing to the plan outlined in the documents, nodding in agreement. I'm currently in the city, having visited a detective agency located in a back alley not far from downtown. Across from me sits Timothy Rogers, dressed in a black suit, the detective assigned to my case. Since yesterday, I've been plagued by a persistent suspicion that Keith might be cheating on me. Reluctantly, I turned to a professional detective. Doubting my husband, with whom I shared my life for several years, wasn't something I could easily discuss with anyone else. Yet the need to uncover the truth outweighed my reservations, and I recounted the events leading up to our meeting. So, what kind of work does your husband usually do? Timothy inquired. He's in a managerial role in sales at a major corporation. Like a department head or something? Yes, something along those lines. But right now, I prefer not to disclose the company's name. Is that all right? I wanted to keep things low-key and avoid involving people who weren't directly connected to what was happening between Keith and me. I understand. Depending on how things progress, we may need that information, but for now, Timothy paused to clarify. Just to confirm, does your husband typically work at the company's main office or at a sales branch? I believe it's the sales branch, I replied, trying to recall. Got it. If he's based at the company, knowing the name would help. I can tell you, but only if you promise not to share it with anyone. Timothy looked a bit nervous as he handed me a pen, and I quickly wrote down the name on the notepad he had placed on the table. This company is pretty big, or rather well known. Yes, exactly. That's why I didn't want to mention it. Can you please keep it confidential? Absolutely. We don't want to cause any trouble for the company. This is strictly about your personal situation. Timothy nodded solemnly, took a deep breath, and continued our discussion. 2 weeks passed since then. I returned to the detective agency and met with Timothy again. I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but your husband is indeed cheating. Oh, I see. I widened my eyes in surprise, and at the same time, I sighed as if resigning myself to the truth. I was hurting inside. What had been a small suspicion had now become a painful reality, yet I felt a sense of duty to face it. It was this mix of emotions that kept me outwardly composed. What's the next step? Should we continue the investigation further? Yes, please. That would mean getting more deeply involved. Are you sure about that? Timothy asked cautiously. Yes, I replied firmly. Even though my heart felt heavy, I was determined to uncover the truth, so I nodded slowly. So the affair is confirmed now? I asked, needing confirmation. Yes, unfortunately. There were times when your husband was living with the woman he had the affair with, Timothy replied somberly. I see. So those times he didn't come home late because of work, but to be with his mistress. Knowing this made anger surge within me, I admitted bitterly. Do you want to see the photographic evidence now, or would you prefer to see it later? You can also choose not to see it, Timothy offered carefully. Show it to me, I said firmly, despite the turmoil inside me. Are you sure? He asked, concerned. Yes, please show it to me, I replied with a trembling voice. Timothy retrieved a photo from a brown envelope and handed it to me. As I looked at it, I saw Keith entering his mistress's house. Naomi hadn't been mistaken. The woman appeared to be around my age, but slightly younger and attractive. Keith seemed happier with her than with me. Naomi was only in first grade, and the thought of divorce pained me, but I couldn't bear to stay with a cheating husband. If this affair harmed Naomi in any way, I knew I had to act now. I looked at the photo again, suppressing my hurt, and made my decision. I need as much information as possible, I said firmly. All right then, we'll conduct an investigation over the next 2 months. Is that acceptable to you? Timothy asked. Yes, I have the funds for it. Please proceed, I replied, meeting Timothy's gaze. Hey, don't be saying such things. All you're doing is lying, came a voice. No, it's the truth. I am now at Keith's parents' house with Naomi not present, allowing me to respond fully to Keith's statements. I have not lied or deceived my parents-in-law. What's wrong with telling the truth? And there's no benefit for me in lying, I assert. A few days ago, Timothy completed his investigation and handed me a report, which I now have in a bag beside me. With this evidence, Keith won't be able to deny his actions, and once it's presented, his parents should understand. However, I need to approach this carefully, knowing Keith is capable of deceiving even those closest to him. I plan to reveal the truth to his parents while carefully observing the situation. You're crazy. My son would never cheat. You're just making up lies like Keith said. It's rude to accuse him falsely. Robert's voice boomed from inside the room. Moments ago, we were all chatting pleasantly, but a small disagreement between Keith and me had quickly turned the atmosphere tense. I had simply mentioned that Keith had been coming home late for the past 6 months, but he immediately became defensive and accused me of lying. I knew I had provoked this, but my resentment towards him ran deep. I had come to this gathering with a sense of needing to confront him. Keith said you can't even handle basic household chores properly. You're just sitting at home, doing nothing, Robert continued, his voice sharp. That's a misunderstanding, I replied firmly. A misunderstanding? Are you calling my son a liar? Yes, I affirmed, keeping my composure despite Robert's intimidating stare. That's absurd. My son is exceptional. I've given him the best education and upbringing. I taught him respect and responsibility. He wouldn't do something like cheat, Robert insisted adamantly. Robert's refusal to accept Keith's actions stemmed from his ignorance of the truth. His demeanor grew more tense by the moment. I was poised to present the evidence and reached for my bag. I used to trust you, but not anymore after this, Susan interjected with disappointment in her voice. Susan had always been kind. When I arrived early at their home today, she greeted me warmly. It was Susan who had initially encouraged Keith to marry me, owing to our mother's long-standing friendship. Yet now, Susan regarded me with suspicion, as if I were a criminal. If things are this bad, we might have to consider divorce, Susan sighed, her words heavy with resignation. I hadn't wanted divorce to be mentioned. Our family runs a prominent company. If people find out that someone like you is married to my son, especially since Keith is set to become CEO in about 10 years, it will reflect poorly on us. Susan continued, her tone direct but her expression apologetic. Plus, she can't even cook properly and is cheating. That's not true. I cook just fine. I defended myself. Really? Your cooking tastes awful, Susan retorted. In that room, where tension hung thick, Keith casually picked up his fork, took a piece of grilled fish from the table, and started eating. His arrogant demeanor grated on my nerves. You know, Mom's cooking is way better than yours, Keith remarked with a laugh. What? That was made by me though, wasn't it? Your usual mistress whose cooking is awful, I muttered in stunned disbelief at Keith's remark. The atmosphere in the room turned tense instantly. Excuse me. Both sets of parents-in-law looked shocked, mouths hanging open. Keith's eyes widened as he dropped the grilled fish he had picked up with his fork onto the table. What are you saying? Susan's voice quivered with surprise. Just what I said, I replied calmly to Susan's question. As I've been saying, the one lying here is my husband. Stop making up stories. Keith slammed his fork down, his voice rising. It's not true. Besides, I cooked that grilled fish this morning when I arrived, not your mother. You and your father wouldn't know since you came later in the afternoon, I explained, maintaining my composure. Keith's irritation grew, and his face flushed red with anger. You have evidence? Keith challenged, standing up from his seat. Yes, I do. I'll show you, I asserted firmly. What? No, you're lying. This is nonsense. Keith protested vehemently. It's true. I'm serious, I asserted firmly, meeting Keith's eyes with an unusually serious expression. Well, anyway, I haven't done anything wrong, Keith muttered, sitting back down quietly. You understand the consequences if this turns out to be true, right? Robert's voice rang out angrily. Let's calm down first. Does Rachel really have evidence? Susan interjected, trying to diffuse the escalating tension. In that moment, Susan was the voice of reason. I retrieved an envelope from my bag and placed photos, along with a letter-sized paper from Timothy, the detective, on the table. Keith's face paled as he watched me lay out the evidence. No, this isn't what it looks like, Keith protested desperately, refusing to face the truth. What's going on? What does all of this mean? Robert demanded, but Keith covered his ears in a futile attempt to block out the truth. What are these? These photos. Who is this person? Are you really cheating? Robert demanded, shocked and dismayed. Yes, that's correct. That's why I had these photos taken as evidence. This is not fabricated. I've also spoken with a lawyer, so if we decide to divorce, it will be handled legally, I stated firmly, my resolve unwavering. I was determined to hold Keith accountable. This could damage the reputation of my company. Robert's voice wavered. The confidence he had shown earlier seemed to fade away. What's the truth here? This isn't my fault, Keith muttered defensively. At Susan's question, Keith covered his face with both hands, unwilling to confront the reality before him. However, he couldn't deny the undeniable evidence any longer. Keith's distressed expression slowly gave way, and it became clear he was starting to regain his composure. All right, I'll talk, Keith slumped, appearing exhausted. He struggled to find the right words. I did cheat, but it's not entirely my fault. Keith began to justify himself from the beginning. I had someone I loved before, Keith admitted. Loved. I was taken aback. Keith had never mentioned this before. Since when? I pressed. Before I met you, before Mom introduced you to me, Keith confessed. So why did you choose to marry me then? I asked, feeling a mix of hurt and confusion. Because it looked good socially, Keith admitted reluctantly. Then he turned to his parents, his expression troubled. What do you mean by that? I asked, trying to comprehend Keith's explanation. Dad wanted me to get married soon, so I was set up with someone Mom recommended, Keith explained, his voice strained. So if you love someone else, why didn't you tell me? I questioned, feeling hurt and betrayed. Because I knew you would criticize me, Keith admitted reluctantly. Who is this person you love? Robert demanded angrily. The suspicion he had harbored towards me now shifted to Keith, and he banged the table with his right hand, demanding the full story. It was someone I met about 10 years ago. She worked at a nightlife spot, but given that my father runs a major company, I couldn't openly discuss it, Keith confessed, his tone resigned. A nightlife spot? Well, in that case, I probably would have opposed the marriage, Robert muttered with frustration and disappointment. Indeed, Keith admitted. Yes, Dad, so it's not entirely my fault. In truth, I wanted to marry her. Keith dropped a bombshell, revealing the truth I had never known. I was left speechless. We had lived together for years, had a child together, but Keith had never truly loved me. It was a devastating realization. She said it would be okay if we got married this year, so I saw it as my chance, Keith continued, explaining himself. Chance? Chance for what? What are you talking about? Susan, who had been listening intently, interjected with confusion. It was my last opportunity to marry her, and I thought if I spoke poorly of Rachel, Dad and Mom would agree to our divorce, Keith confessed bitterly. I'm tired of all of it, the societal pressures and expectations. I just want a simple life. I'd rather spend my life with that woman than with our family. Keith spoke with a raw honesty I had never heard from him before. Despite my hurt, I felt a twinge of sympathy, realizing the stress he had been under all these years. But it also became clear that our relationship had only been a facade, lacking any genuine love. So, what are you going to do about our marriage? I asked, my voice trembling. I'm going to get a divorce, Keith replied, his decision final. Do you have any idea how much money I've spent on you? Robert's anger escalated, his frustration palpable. Hey, please stop, I interjected, trying to ease the tension. What, you're siding with him now? Robert snapped back, his anger directed towards me. It's not about taking sides. We've never heard his true feelings before. He's always followed our advice and done what was expected, even since his college days, I explained, hoping to bring some perspective. And what about my business? I won't accept it unless he marries someone suitable, Robert continued, his fury unabated. I'm sorry, Keith's voice trembled with pain. Just saying sorry won't fix this, Robert retorted harshly. But isn't it enough that he's finally being honest with us? Susan interjected gently, her voice soothing the heated atmosphere. I'm filing for divorce, so what about taking over my company? What's your decision? Robert demanded, his expression stern and unwavering. I can't take it over anymore, Keith replied quietly, his resolve clear despite the turmoil. I see. So are you prepared to take full responsibility? Robert asked, seeking a final confirmation. It might be tough, but I'll manage, Keith replied with a hint of uncertainty. Then do as you please. I won't interfere. From today, you're no longer part of this family. Remember that, Robert declared firmly, his disappointment evident as he left the dining table and exited the room. I'm truly sorry, Keith turned to me with regret in his eyes, pleading for forgiveness. But despite his apology, I couldn't forgive him for the turmoil he had caused in my life. I was resolute about getting a divorce and securing child support to move forward. I contacted the attorney I had spoken with earlier that day, and the process of divorcing Keith began the following day. A few months have passed since then, and I feel like my life has improved, even though it's not as comfortable as before. Despite the challenges, I'm in a better place now. Mom, I'm off to school, Naomi called out. Take care, honey, I replied. Naomi is now in second grade, and I'm navigating life as a single mom. I had to return to work, but it's a far cry from living with Keith, who never truly loved me. After seeing Naomi off to school, I head to work. Interestingly, the company I work for is managed by my father-in-law. We've reconciled, and they've been incredibly supportive, helping me in various ways at work. It turned out that much of what Keith had claimed was untrue, and his parents have apologized for his behavior. Thanks to their support, I was able to join this company. However, after our divorce was finalized, Keith moved in with the person he had an affair with and never returned. He's been consistent with child support payments, given his financial stability. Through hearsay, I've heard he's been wandering the streets late at night, looking worn and troubled. I'm unsure about his current relationship with the person he cheated with, but it no longer concerns me. My focus now is on providing for Naomi and building a stable future for us. Letting go of the past, I've taken the first steps toward a new life. My son and I are about to start living a luxurious life abroad with his $3 million. Once you get divorced, you won't be able to support yourself. If you want to know where we're going, you need to get on your knees and lick my shoes. What? What are you saying? I don't understand. I had no idea what my mother-in-law was talking about. I never knew they were planning to go abroad or that they had saved up so much money. It's because my son has $3 million. We're going to live a fancy life overseas, just the two of us. Why would my husband go abroad? And what's this about $3 million? Why do you want to know so badly? If you really want to know, kneel down, beg, and lick my shoes. Then maybe I'll tell you. Why are you acting like this? Where is my husband? Oh, we're very comfortable here. We're enjoying the high life with my son's $3 million, so you're no longer needed. I was shocked by my mother-in-law's words. What does she mean that my husband suddenly got $3 million and is living a luxurious life abroad? And why is she talking as if I'm an outsider? I was filled with anger and anxiety, but I needed to stay calm and figure out what was going on. How did my husband get such a huge amount of money? And could that $3 million be connected to something else? I work as a manager at a big IT company, and that's where I met my husband. His positive and cheerful personality drew me to him, and we eventually got married. In the early years of our marriage, his parents welcomed me warmly. Later on, we had a daughter who is now 14 years old. I grew up in poverty and had a difficult relationship with my parents. Because of my own challenging upbringing, I was determined to give my daughter all the love and care she deserved, while also balancing my career and household responsibilities. However, one day, my husband was assigned to a project in Texas and had to move there alone. It's going to be tough managing everything on my own with our daughter, I told him. Yeah, handling work, chores, and our daughter by yourself will be a lot. Maybe we should ask my mom to come and help out, he suggested. Reluctantly, I agreed, seeing it as a practical solution to our situation. So, we decided to have my mother-in-law move in with us to lend a hand. Mommy, when is Daddy coming back? My daughter asked one day. He's going to be in Texas for a while. But don't worry, Grandma's coming over, I reassured my daughter. And so, my mother-in-law moved in with us. Little did I know that this decision would become the biggest regret of my life. You're working late again today, huh? Women who neglect their families. I would often come home to her biting remarks. I have a job too, and I take care of our daughter. I would argue back, but she was never satisfied. When I was young, family meant everything. I never even thought about working outside the home, she would reminisce. Then, on the day my daughter received good grades at school, she remarked, "It's all thanks to me. What's the point of you? Maybe we don't need you around." Despite my mother-in-law only helping with simple homework tasks, I was the one teaching my daughter most subjects. Whenever I made a small mistake while cooking, she'd criticize, "How did you and my son survive before with such poor cooking skills?" I'm doing my best and everyone has their own way, I'd retort, feeling my patience wearing thin. She's not doing her chores, she'd complain to my husband. Mom, she's working too. Please understand, my husband would defend me. Living together, tensions between my mother-in-law and me grew. With my husband far away, I felt increasingly isolated. One day, I decided to call my husband to talk about it. How? Are you okay right now? Yeah, I'm good. What's up? It's kind of late. Well, your mom really laid into me about the house chores, and it's starting to get to me. I'm sorry, Mom's always been sharp-tongued, but maybe there's something to what she's saying. Still, don't let it bother you too much. Just keep doing things at your own pace. Feeling somewhat reassured by my husband's words, I tried to refocus on our daily routine. But with my husband away, the pressure from my mother-in-law kept mounting, and I was becoming increasingly exhausted. Each day, I eagerly awaited my husband's return. Living with my mother-in-law in my husband's absence was tough. At first, I clung to his memory to get through, but as weeks passed, her behavior became unbearable. She criticized every little thing I did from morning till night. When I made my husband's favorite rice dish, she coldly remarked, "This tastes terrible. Who would eat this?" If I took a short break, she'd scold me, saying, "How can a woman who can't handle household chores take a break?" I never had much confidence in housework. With my husband, he would just laugh off my small mistakes. But in front of my mother-in-law, I felt like I couldn't afford to make any errors. I think her treatment of me comes from her intense love for her son. She seems unwilling to accept that he married me and moved away from her. This experience made me resolve never to become an overbearing parent like her. One day, after treating myself to a small shopping spree at a local mall, my mother-in-law found out. When I got home, she was waiting for me at the entrance, furious. "How could you go out for fun when your husband isn't home? What about the household chores?" I thought I needed a little break. A break? In this situation? All this trouble is because of your incompetence. After that encounter, I waited for a call from my husband. I hoped hearing his voice would lift my spirits, but what he said was far from comforting. "I've got some bad news. My work in Texas isn't going well. I got into gambling, and now I'm in a tight spot financially. I've also accumulated quite a debt," my husband confessed over the phone. "What? Are you serious? Gambling in debt? This is completely unexpected. What about our future and our daughters?" I replied, shocked and worried. "I'm sorry, really sorry. I feel stuck right now, but trust me, I'll figure something out," he pleaded. "How? How do you plan to handle this? How much do you owe?" "I'm working on a solution," was all he could say. I always believed my husband was sincere and wouldn't gamble. He was always dependable, never missing our dates. Even after we moved in together, he always came straight home from work and appreciated everything I did around the house. It was his honesty and sincerity that made me fall in love with him. But now, with him far away and my mother-in-law's constant criticism, my life felt unbearable. "I can't believe someone as useless as you married my son," my mother-in-law's harsh words echoed in my mind. My heart sank deeper into despair as my husband continued working away from home. Constantly criticized and blamed by my mother-in-law, the weight of my husband's recent confession about his debts and gambling only added to my despair. With the barrage of criticism from her, I reached a breaking point. One night, overwhelmed, I left the house and found myself crying on a park bench. Then one day, my mother-in-law unearthed a secret from my past. During dinner, she used it against me. "So, I heard you used to work in a nightclub, huh? Shame on you for raising my grandchild after working in such a place. How did you find out about that?" I was telling someone about how useless my son's wife is and showed them a picture of you. They recognized you. Apparently, you weren't even good at that nightclub job. In my past, frustrated with a mother who never worked and always partied, I left my family home. Struggling for money, I found work at a nightclub. This was before I married my husband, a secret I thought he didn't know. I was speechless. I never imagined my mother-in-law would discover this about my past, and now she was using it against me. "I can't believe someone like you is the mother of my grandchild. I'll tell my son and have you kicked out." My despair deepened. Everything I had built with my husband, all my efforts, and the future I had hoped for seemed to crumble under her words. My husband's communication became scarce, and I feared he was beginning to doubt and suspect me. One night, alone in my room, I reflected on my life, meeting my husband, our marriage, our current situation, and the constant blame and accusations from my mother-in-law. I felt like I couldn't go on. I can't take it anymore. Whispering those words, I stepped out into the quiet nighttime streets, feeling the weight of despair inside me. My mother-in-law's harsh words echoed in my mind, criticizing my past, my secrets, and my present. Sitting alone on a park bench, I looked up at the sky, devoid of stars, feeling as dark inside as it was outside. Suddenly, someone approached. "Mom, why are you here?" It was my daughter, sitting down beside me and holding my hand. "Mom, don't let Grandma get to you. You work hard at your IT job, and you've overcome so much. You're strong." "Thank you, but maybe Grandma is right." "Mom, Grandma is stuck in the past. In today's world, any job you've done should make you proud. I'm proud that you worked at a nightclub." "Really?" "Yes, because it shows you've always tried your best for us, no matter the circumstances. Don't let Grandma's words control you." My daughter's words touched me deeply, and tears welled up in my eyes. "Mom, you're doing such a great job in IT now, right? That's amazing. I'll always support you, no matter what Grandma says." Gratitude flooded my heart. Her unwavering support gave me renewed strength and hope that we could face anything together. Later, in my husband's study, I took a deep breath before diving into a pile of paperwork. I meticulously went through each document, trying to unravel his secrets. Bank statements, credit card bills, loan agreements. Gradually, my husband's financial situation began to reveal itself. Why did this happen? I discovered several receipts detailing gambling activities, horse racing, slot machines, and casino visits. The realization of how much money my husband had squandered was heartbreaking. Turning on his PC, I guessed the reverse version of his birthday as the password to access his email. Inside, I found numerous collection emails from financial institutions and messages from friends demanding repayment of loans. Additionally, his inbox was flooded with promotional emails from gambling websites. I decided to tally up the total amount my husband had spent on gambling. The staggering result was $3 million, far exceeding what I had anticipated. Seeing that figure, I felt a moment of panic, but I knew I had to act swiftly. I started planning how to secure funds to sustain our livelihood. This included tapping into my savings, estimating proceeds from selling our high-end electronics and luxury items at home, and budgeting with my salary savings. Every detail mattered in this critical moment. Afterward, I continued my personal investigation. Every day, I diligently contacted financial institutions to understand the extent of my husband's debts, obtaining credit reports in his name. A few days later, I formulated a plan. I started laying the groundwork to establish a life independent of my husband and mother-in-law, while also devising the strategy to repay his debts. Leveraging my expertise in the IT industry, I decided to pursue freelance projects. Over the next few days, I built a portfolio and signed up on a freelance job platform. Shortly after, I received my first request from a client. "This will help cover some of our living expenses," I thought gratefully. In between my daily work, I meticulously reviewed our household finances. I canceled unnecessary subscriptions, reduced wasteful spending, and researched budget-friendly recipes to cut down on food expenses. With insights from local moms, I organized a community yard sale, successfully selling branded items and extra electronics for a decent sum. As my freelance work gained momentum over the following weeks, I began to feel more secure about my income. By then, my bank account held enough to cover our essential living expenses. When I returned home one day, I noticed all of my mother-in-law's belongings were gone. At the same time, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law calling. "Oh, are you already home? Did you notice our stuff is gone?" My mother-in-law's voice came through the phone. "What are you trying to say?" I asked cautiously. "My son and I are starting a luxurious life abroad with his $3 million. Once you divorce, you won't be able to make ends meet. If you want our address, get on your knees and lick my shoes," she declared arrogantly. I couldn't help but chuckle. Actually, that $3 million is a debt. "Stop joking. There's no way my son has that kind of debt," she retorted confidently. "You might not believe it, but it's true. In his study, there are transaction records from banks and financial institutions, credit card bills, contracts, and more. Plus, on his PC, there are collection emails from financial institutions, messages from friends demanding repayment, and promotional emails from gambling sites. If you don't believe me, why don't you check?" "You're lying," she insisted. "It's the result of his deep involvement in gambling, horse racing, slot machines, casinos. In total, It amounts to a staggering $3 million. I've just sent you photos of the evidence. Maybe you should take a look. I had no idea, my mother-in-law admitted, her voice softening. He probably didn't want you to know, but these are the facts. I've been figuring out how to handle this enormous debt, but I suppose I don't need to anymore. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I truly didn't know. I don't know what to say, she finally responded. Without another word, I ended the call. I knew I had to start afresh from this point onward. Despite the shock caused by my husband and mother-in-law's actions, I resolved to move forward for the sake of my daughter and myself. Later on, my husband called. I'm so sorry. Truly, I am. My husband's voice came through, subdued in a way I had never heard before. But despite his apology, my anger burned unabated. Why did it come to this? Our family is falling apart because of you, I retorted sharply. I never thought it would come to this. But when I decided to go overseas with Mom, I couldn't see a future with you and our daughter, he explained, his words leaving me stunned. You couldn't see? It's because of your recklessness and lack of planning that our family is in this mess, I accused bitterly. I know that, but it's too late now. I made a promise to Mom, he replied. A promise? What kind of promise sacrifices our daughter's future for your own paradise? I challenged, feeling the weight of betrayal. There was a prolonged silence from my husband. Did you ever truly love our family? I did, but now it's different. His voice broke, and I could hear him crying. Please don't hurt us anymore. My daughter and I will live on our own from now on. We'll move on without you. He didn't respond. All I could hear was his sobbing from the other end. Calmly, I hung up the phone. The confusion started when my mother-in-law mistook a bill for $3 million as a winning lottery notice. Believing they had come into a windfall, she began planning their dream move overseas and convinced my husband to go along. Unaware of her misunderstanding and thinking a fresh start abroad would solve their financial woes, he agreed. Realizing it was a bill and not a lottery win, my anger towards my husband grew. I began searching for a lawyer, preparing for divorce, and seeking compensation for emotional distress and child support. A new chapter was about to begin, for me and my daughter, free from my husband and mother-in-law. I consulted with a lawyer about the divorce process, emotional distress claims, and securing child support. During this time, my daughter and I bonded deeply, and she became my strongest supporter. She fully understood my decision and chose to stand by me. Hearing her unwavering support made all the hardships with my husband and mother-in-law worthwhile, and tears of relief and gratitude flowed freely. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law and husband struggled in their new life overseas. Despite their hopes for a fresh start, they encountered ongoing challenges due to inadequate preparation and financial troubles. Their situation worsened when they were pickpocketed and lost their remaining funds, compounded by language barriers. Eventually, they were deported for overstaying their visas. Later on, I negotiated the terms of the divorce through my lawyer. The divorce was finalized, and we agreed that my husband would pay emotional distress compensation and child support in a single lump sum. As my daughter and I embraced our new life free from the turmoil of the past, I felt a sense of peace knowing we were moving forward together, stronger and more resilient than before. Thank you. Now I can finally start a new life, I expressed with relief. But all at once, wouldn't it be better in installments? The lawyer suggested. He's taken on even more debt, apparently borrowing money from some shady loan shark. I don't know what happened to him after that, and honestly, I don't care. After being evicted from her rental property and losing all her savings due to being pickpocketed, my mother-in-law found herself homeless upon her return to the U.S. Meanwhile, my daughter and I embarked on our new life. It wasn't without its challenges, but being free from the burden of my husband and mother-in-law allowed us to face the future with optimism. I am determined to live happily, working together with my daughter, who has been my beacon of hope through the darkest times.